The 8th meeting of the Goffstown Board of Selectmen. Everyone please rise for the pledge. Whoops, sorry about that, Nick. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First order of business would be the acceptance and or correction of the meeting minutes of June 14th.
Motion to accept the minutes of June 14th.
Is there a second to that?
Can you be close? Can we? I know we want to keep one door open, but I'm having. Yes. I mean, do we have to have one door open?
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second. Are there any?
One correction on page 5.
Yes.
Like, it's fourth paragraph down. It says here, Selectman Pierce asked about the waste oil at DPW. I don't mind being quoted to say that, but I think it was somebody else.
Oh, you do? Someone want to claim it?
Maybe it was, I think, I seem to recall it was.
We'll put someone.
A selectman.
A selectman asked.
Okay.
Do we even know what happened?
No, someone did ask about how much oil they used, waste oil they used. And the last quote in that paragraph was mine. But leave it as it is. I'm just, in case anybody wanted to take ownership for it, I'll claim it.
Not here. All right, so we're going to proceed with the.
And Kathleen.
Change the name.
Oh, it's Catherine.
Yes.
Putin, not Kathleen.
Exactly.
Okay.
Make that change.
All right. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of June 14th, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. 621. Was there? We want to defer that one?
That was the minutes. So,
Okay, we'll defer that one until later. And the 6-7 non-public. Any issues with that one? We can defer that one too if you want.
Got them circled for some reason.
Okay, we'll just defer that to the end. Announcements, really none to speak of except that there is state election law training, and this is for clerks, moderators, supervisors of the checklist, selectmen, etc. And every once in a while it's in our own town, which is the case. That's on Thursday, August 18th, and if we could just let, I know that all the selectmen got that, but if we can let other elected officials know. All right, we're going to move ahead a little bit. Next is a public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public to address the board. Please come on up. Just state your name.
Good evening. Collis Adams, 16 Wallace Road for the record. Thanks for the opportunity. There's actually several issues I want to bring up tonight since now I have the audience. It was only one, but now it's three. And the first I want to bring up is the minutes from your June 1st, 2010 meeting. Specifically, some of the minutes as they appear at the bottom of page 4 and the top of page 5. Now, I understand I didn't have a chance to see the full meeting. I understand these are minutes, so I don't get a full tone for how the conversation went, nor how the whole proceeding went. So, I'll preface by saying that I'm sure the minutes are obviously boiled down significantly. But the issue stems around a phone call that Chairman Gross got from Brian Fournier relative to an application that's before the planning board for his landscaping business, which actually is operating illegally right now because it doesn't have the proper approvals to operate the business at its location.
I just have to stop you for 1 second because I can't.
Yeah, I know, it's horrible.
It's hard.
Sounds like a fun party.
And you're welcome to join us afterwards.
Right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, and I'll keep this brief and concise. It talks about apparently Mr. Fournier had some concerns about my conduct specifically. And I'm not sure if it's relative to my conduct as a planning board member or as a conservation commission member. It's not clear in the minutes. But suffice it to say, as you all know, the Board of Selectmen operates under one state statute. The planning board operates under a separate state statute. Neither one controls or dictates how the other operates. So I'm guessing it pertains to the Conservation Commission, although that's not clear to me at all. But what I do want to say, it talks about inappropriate conduct by me, I presume. I'm reading that into this. And the fact that there was a site inspection scheduled, and I postponed the site inspection, and again, I don't want to read into this, but it seems to imply that I did this to somehow influence the process. That's not the case, obviously. If his concerns were relative to the Conservation Commission, I'm an alternate member on the commission. I don't vote on the commission. I obviously participate in the meetings, and I provide, my comments and whatnot, but I do not participate in any decisions unless I'm required to fill in for an absentee. In this case, I did not. I was on the site inspection as a planning board representative when we went up that rainy day and looked over the site with the applicant. So I want to make that perfectly clear. I was there as a planning board member. I'm a little concerned about the last sentence in the minutes that talks about Selectman Pierce thought it unusual and that I should probably recuse myself from issues that require local approval, that also require state approval. If we're talking about the planning board, I don't think that's appropriate. In fact, I think that's very wrong. They're separate statutes to begin with, number one. Number two, if that were the case, I might as well resign from the planning board because virtually every application that comes before the planning board, be it a subdivision or site plan approval, requires one or more DES approvals. I ran for planning board and I believe was elected to the planning board because of my expertise in land development issues and land use regulations. And I think I bring that resource to this town, and I think that's important not only to Goffstown but any municipality in the state of New Hampshire. In fact, more than 50% of the DES employees also serve on various land use boards in their communities, and it's a great asset to the community. So I want to just set the record straight on that. And again, I'm not trying to find criticism. I'm sure the minutes have been boiled down greatly, but I wanted to set the record straight. I also wanted to make it clear that I in no way was involved with the decision-making at DES relative to the site inspection. Okay, there's a very strict policy that I've instituted in the Bureau, and that is that no staff member is involved with any permitting decision or any enforcement action that takes place within their community, and that includes myself as Bureau Administrator. In fact, I did not participate in DES decisions when it came to the Bog Road development, which was a huge subdivision or residential development, as you know. I am not involved with the application that is currently before the Wetlands Bureau relative to protecting the sewer line and the options relative to that, which require fill out into the river. Granted, my staff does come to me for advice and input on that, and I provide that for them. That's part of my responsibilities, but it is a very strict policy in the Bureau that no staff member, including myself, becomes involved in decision-making issues, whether it be relative to a permit application or an enforcement and compliance action. So I want the board to understand that's how we operate. That's how it operated in this case. I don't know the details of all the complaint from Mr. Fournier, but suffice it to say, I wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you.
And I appreciate lending an ear on that. There's just two more issues I want to touch on real briefly.
Okay.
One of them, there's been a lot of talk about the waterfront at Glen Lake. I don't know if any of you drove by the waterfront this morning. Yesterday, we had a church group with 20 volunteers who volunteered their time Sunday morning to clean up the waterfront. It looks great. It's continuing to improve. I know there's been a lot of discussion about residents versus non-residents using it and what policies or procedures or practices the town should adopt relative to that. I would encourage the board to organize a group to talk about that. I know you've talked about it, and I know you've agreed to some things, you've not agreed to other things, but I'll lay it right on the table with you. If changes don't occur down there, there will be a petition article on the ballot, and there's no doubt in my mind that it will pass handily. And I would much rather, as a member of this community, see the Board of Selectmen work cooperatively with the concerned citizens to move that forward in a way that is agreeable and workable by all parties involved, as opposed to a petition coming forward that may not fit properly, if you follow me. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I would suggest and encourage the board to do that. I certainly would volunteer my efforts, having a long history with that project and that property, and I know others would as well, and I would encourage you that maybe that's a better way to go, because I can guarantee you'll see a petition article.
I'm at a speed jump as I got
Okay,
6:15.
last issue. The roundabout construction. I'm sure that there are conditions, although I can't cite them, relative to hours of operation down there. Since it's a residential neighborhood, 5:30 a.m. this morning, construction vehicles arriving, offloading equipment, backup signals, all kinds of noise down there. 5:30 in the morning, in a residential neighborhood. That's unacceptable. Somebody needs to be called to task on that, and I appreciate it if you'd look into that for me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos, for coming in. Would anyone else like to be heard in public comment? Come on up. The only caveat, John, is that we got this proclamation at 6:15, so if you could.
Okay, just a minute, yeah.
Okay, appreciate it.
2 minutes in.
Thank you, John Heichel, 483 Mast Road. Just here to give you we've been in Concord working on some more issues with the budget. Just a quick summary of some things we've been talking about.
John, you got to just back off the mic a little
sorry.
bit. Yeah.
Okay, how's that? Testing, 1, 2, check. Okay. The nonpartisan legislative budget assistance projects one-time revenue sources in the original budget and the recent deficit package to exceed $1 billion, even excluding the $110 JOA fund that got returned. Nearly $200 million of that amount is unprecedented borrowing for operating expenses rather than capital investments such as buildings or bridges. Much of the balance of a one-time revenue was federal stimulus funds that we won't be getting back. We're looking at $350 million this year in a deficit, probably equaling that next year, if not slightly more. So we are in a serious issue, and we've been working over this budget diligently for the past several weeks since it passed, but trying to figure out what we're going to be doing for next year. They are looking at unspecified sale of some state property. They're desperate. They're looking for ways to raise revenue at this point. Next year, facing nearly $1 billion one-time revenue shortfall, New Hampshire will confront a fiscal train wreck. While spending soared and the deficit grew, the numerous tax hikes over the last 4 years have hurt families,
John, if I could just,
small businesses.
What is the source of what you're reading? Is it this is from the state office? I know that there's like offices that do like nonpartisan budget work. What's the source of some of these comments that you're making? Is this your own comment, or is this?
These are my summaries from the committee work that I've been working on with 2 different committees on trying to figure out how we're going to come up with a budget repair for next year.
Okay. Because I know that the state legislature has I guess it's a nonpartisan where you can bring, whatever proposals you have, and they figure out any type of, tax impacts or revenue projections. Is that where these numbers are coming from, or not really?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
All these new taxes and our warning signs in terms of national rankings, the recent backdrop of 50,000 unemployed people in New Hampshire, which has reduced slightly over the past month by 1,000 or so. That's good news. With New Hampshire people being unemployed and the national pace of job growth anemic at best. So things are moving slowly. We all know that. We're all aware of it. And I'm being asked by some of our neighbors and constituents to just ask you folks to be prudent and fiscally responsible with the money that has been appropriated to you. Continue to make sure that we really need to spend this money. And if it's possible to put some back in for next year, that would be great. And try not to spend 100%. Try to spend less than that, what you've been given this year to do. And that's it. I just wanted to fill you in. We're working hard up in Concord doing this, and and the word is just be careful with our money.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, I know that you have your regulations to deal with. I just wanted to address the board reference to item number 5B this evening. My thoughts reference to some notes that I'm made aware of in the EDC minutes and people I've spoken to, and what it basically boils down to, I understand that, and I may be wrong, you guys can move on with it, the information that I bring forward, that the might be a proposal coming from EDC to the BOS for referencing the incentive for people to improve their properties and give them a tax break for that. I would ask this board to not consider something like that because it doesn't do anything for the economy. We have businesses that are leaving our town. We have businesses that are going out of business. I would like the board and the EDC to work together to try and save these businesses. That's if we're going to provide some tax relief, let's find a way to provide some tax relief for businesses that are in town and those that might be closing.
I have no problem entertaining your comment after this is discussed, if you'd like to wait.
Well, I have a GTV meeting to go to for 6:30, and
Okay.
I appreciate that, and I have to leave. And also, I'd like to know if we can get the GTV page up on the website so that Dick and I can start working on it. And that's the two things I wanted to bring up. I would like to just convey that message, and just so you'll know, I will be going around over the next couple of weeks interviewing businesses, doing some video work, and I will be writing a story on it. And hopefully there'll be some information from that the board can derive some information from. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Would anybody else like to be heard? If not, we'll go get Maddie. Bill, I'm not sure what time we're going to, Bill, I'm not sure what time we're going to hit that topic, but it's possible that it would be probably, I'm thinking 6:45 to 7 o'clock, right? Yeah, we're going to hit that?
Heavy agenda
Okay.
in the studio tonight.
Okay,
If I can't get
yeah.
out early, I'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Just wanted to afford you that opportunity. Are they coming?
Karen's on me, I waved her in.
Oh.
Come on down.
Is this your handwriting?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, my head's down.
Were you a doctor at one point, or?
Don't worry, I've heard it for 25 years. He has to go.
It's probably, this is one of the,
Now ask her if that's writing or printing.
oh,
No, seriously, ask her.
It's printing.
that's print, yeah. No, usually wouldn't have thought that was yours.
It's not feminine.
No, there is truth to that.
I broke my arm as a child. I was supposed to be a lefty.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
There you go.
Part of it, the other part of it is overused.
Yeah.
What did you do, Marlene?
I was broke, but I got fixed. Sure.
All right, we're gonna get started, everyone. Kathy, do we have everyone in here now? Okay, folks, we're going to get started. It's always a distinct honor and privilege to recognize a citizen in our community, a great citizen in our community, and it's my pleasure to bring Maddie Enman up to the front. How you doing, Maddie? As I said, it's always great recognizing one of our outstanding citizens, and I really can't think of someone more outstanding than you, Maddie. I've known you when I was on the school board, and you talk about someone who's a tireless worker, someone who's meant so much to our community, and meant so much to the kids in our community. My tenure when I was on the school board, Maddie really spearheaded, the breakfast and making sure that every kid, regardless of their income or the socioeconomic level, had a good breakfast and had a good meal. And that's not something that was easy for her. Everyone has budget constraints, and I know we were always working the numbers to make sure that the budgets would balance out and we'd be able to keep the costs down. And Maddie was always there advocating for the kids, making sure that they had a full belly. And it's those little things that really mean a lot in our community. And in the eyes of the folks that are here and the thousands of children, you are their hero. So with that, I'd like to read the following proclamation. Whereas a proclamation is a means whereby the town of Goffstown may honor the dedication of those individuals who serve their town, and whereas Maddie Enman began her service to the SAU as food service director for the 1967-1968 school year of my birth, while raising 4 boys and never having a sick day, along with her day-to-day enthusiasm with joy for the school kids and her mother-like nurturing of many of them. And whereas Maddie has exemplified her dedication to her community by providing assistance to the town during elections by preparing food for election workers, by her numerous and substantial efforts to many community organizations, such as the Goffstown Lions Club, the Kidney Foundation, and others, but particularly by the investment of her time with the Upreach Therapeutic Riding Center as a founding board member, as a volunteer caring for the horses, as an instructor, and by her tremendous efforts as food events coordinator for the Hoedowns for many, many years, which were a true gift of the heart done with love. And now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Goffstown Board of Selectmen for the town of Goffstown, county of Hillsborough, state of New Hampshire, by virtue of the authority vested in us, do hereby honor you, Maddie Enman, in recognition of your extraordinary years of service and dedication to the town of Goffstown. We, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Goffstown, county of Hillsborough, state of New Hampshire, by virtue of the authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim today, June 28th, 2010, be designated as Maddie Enman Day throughout the town of Goffstown, New Hampshire, and urge all of you as citizens to recognize her day. So thank you so much. I do believe that there is a reception, and this is probably the first time that Maddie has not prepared food for other people. Others have prepared food for you as a way of saying thank you, and it's we've done a lot of proclamations in Goffstown over the many, many years. I have to say, this is probably one of the biggest crowds that we have ever had. I think that's a testament to what a special person you are and how people want to thank you for all you've done. So thank you again.
Okay.
So the question is it turkey sandwiches that we're having, or?
I don't know. Would you like grinders?
What, grinders?
Seafood salad.
Yeah.
You think we're going to be short?
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We took a bit of a brief recess to honor Maddie Enman, and now we're back. And our first order of business upon a return is going to be a presentation from the Economic Development Council, and we have Derek Horn here. And Derek, I believe that you're going to be presenting to us on this RSA 79E, which I know I was part of some of those discussions when I was the liaison to that.
Yep.
So, feel free to come on down. We also have others from the EDC who are here, and I don't know if you want to come a little bit closer. It's your prerogative. Okay.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present. This is a similar presentation to what I showed the Economic Development Council on Tuesday, and it was a consensus of the council to bring it back to the selectmen to see whether this was something worth pursuing, to see if this is something that the town would like to see enacted. This is legislation that was adopted in 2006, and as many of you are aware, New Hampshire is not a home rule state. You can only do the tax programs and the different benefits for businesses that are enabled by legislation. And this one was specifically designed for the rehabilitation, reuse of existing structures, because they found, for a couple of reasons, it enhances the economic viability of a town when you work in an existing downtown, and it also works against urban sprawl. Rather than going to vacant lots that have yet to be developed, this is an incentive that works against urban sprawl that much of New Hampshire battles with. How it works: a property owner that is located in a designated downtown or village area would come before the Board of Selectmen and apply for the tax relief. The rehabilitation they would have to do would have to be deemed substantial, which is 15% of the assessed value, or $75,000, whichever is less. And it also need to be deemed to have a public benefit. The Board of Selectmen would then have the ability to grant the temporary tax relief for a finite period of time. And during that time, any increase in the property valuation that results from the rehabilitation it basically freezes the assessment before the rehabilitation takes place. The nice thing about this specific legislation is, if approved at town meeting, it retains local control throughout. The selectmen hold a public notice hearing. The application process takes input from the Historic District Commission on if it's a historic building, and it allows the public to be involved throughout. The rehabilitation has to be consistent with the master plan, and it has to demonstrate one of these 4 public benefits. It has to enhance economic vitality of the downtown, enhance a historically important structure, promote development of the municipal centers, or increase residential housing, which goes in hand in hand with the affordable housing that was passed a few years ago as well. The selectmen may deny the application in its discretion, as long as you are not, the Board of Selectmen is not discriminatory. It's really up to the Board of Selectmen to determine whether or not it meets those requirements. If a relief is granted, it can be for up to 5 years, and then there's some bonus provisions if they're new units, affordable housing units, or if it's a historically significant structure that is going to be reconstructed following the Department of Interior standards. And to ensure that the rehabilitation is completed and the public benefit is protected, covenants are recorded as part of this, and they can be for up to twice as long as the tax relief is granted. And if for some reason that rehabilitation is not completed or public benefit is removed in a change in use in the future, the town is authorized to go and recoup those taxes that were not collected during that relief period. Real-world example, there are a few towns throughout municipalities in the state of New Hampshire that have done this, and one of them is Manchester. And their most recent was the Pandora Mills. And the owner, who had already started rehabilitation of that project, went before the Board of Aldermen, and when they started, it had an assessed value of $5 million, And as you can see, the construction costs of almost $10 million. The alderman granted relief for 5 years, and that is basically that developer, that property owner is protected in that increase in a valuation. That's approximately $5 million a year, and based on the Manchester tax rate, that's almost $90,000 per year, which could be the difference between a property owner seeking to pour that money in and develop a site. If the Board of Selectmen and Economic Development wanted to go forward with this, what would need to be done is downtown and village areas would need to be designated. Where would this tax relief take place? And then it would be a question on the warrant, go before the town meeting, and then if it's approved, the Selectmen would hold public hearings on a case-by-case basis.
Are you doing questions at the end?
No, you can, I'm sorry, I should have.
So, I think that there are some that have heard about this, maybe a cursory explanation. They're thinking it's just the village, but from what you're telling me, it could be areas of Pinardville, it could be parts of Grassmere, it could be any place that is just, I guess, deemed downtown or a village type area.
Yes, and it is really structured to allow each town to designate that downtown area. And again, because you're trying to fight urban sprawl, it's to look at the master plan and what is defined as nodes and urban centers, and what are important places, and any place can really be deemed by that town.
Is there any limitation on what the community does, designates? I mean, you couldn't designate the entire town.
There's no percentages based on, like a TIF district. You're limited in your percent land area. This has no limit, but it just says it does have to be a downtown or village area.
Okay.
But other than that, there's no guidance or any case law to really show where that is.
Just a question on that?
Yeah.
Is that possible to do an area then for industrial development? Because I noticed those 4 points on a prior slide showed housing. They mentioned housing. But I didn't see anything specific to like an industrial park. The reason why I'm asking that, because in the past we had looked at one of the issues that we had was developing some industrial areas or large commercial areas, bringing in water and sewer. And we looked at doing tax relief, and statutorily the Selectmen couldn't do it. We didn't have that ability. Can't do it in New Hampshire. But something like this possibly might, if it was a feasible area for a specific type of development. But that's got nothing to do with urban sprawl, so that's why I was wondering.
No, it would have to be a developed area of town, and it's not really limited to uses, because again, the first public benefit is the economic vitality of the downtown. So if it was a densely populated or a densely used portion of the town, I think you could use it for that, but it does have some limitations in undeveloped land.
Okay.
So, specifically, just so that maybe those who might be watching can maybe visualize some of this. I mean, the properties that come to my mind are obviously the mill down in the village, maybe the Gap building right next door to Town Hall. I also think of maybe Pinardville Jutras Signs. That's a building, that's a pretty large building, but I'm told it needs a considerable amount of upgrade to it.
Yes.
So these are the types of structures which, if they might be subject to, if there were monies invested into those properties, they could seek tax relief on a short-term basis, if this was enacted.
And I think those are great examples, but there's also some of the smaller businesses. A property that's only assessed for about $300,000, making that 15%, you're talking $45,000 worth of rehabilitation, where they're not going to see a huge tax benefit. It might only be $1,000 a year. But that $1,000 a year, if they pass it on to a tenant that's starting up a new business, that might be the difference.
So it could even be like Patrick's Eatery.
Yes.
That puts in, a couple $100,000 of improvements to the restaurant. Now they could seek relief for those improvements.
Correct. And that's really pretty much everything I have. I'll email the slide presentation, because there are a few links that are quite helpful, but I welcome any questions, and we also have the EDC members here who, if they want to speak to it.
Now, I'm always one to try to, let's talk about what are the cons here, and we had, Mr. Nguyen was here, and he was speaking against it, and I can contact him to see why he feels that way. I think one of the issues was we should be doing something for existing businesses right now, try to offer them some tax help. But this is more about encouraging, I guess, it's more about revitalization and encouraging an upgrading of facilities, not so much giving people a tax, an immediate decrease in their taxes or a temporary. This is trying to encourage people to develop or improve their buildings.
Correct, and this won't take any revenue off the tax revenue stream. What it's
just
doing,
delaying.
it's freezing,
Right.
it's delaying that valuation increase.
Right. So if somebody was on the fence and they said, you know, my building, I could use probably about $100,000 or $200,000 worth of upgrades, they might be on the fence because now it's like, not only have to do that, but now I have to pay increased taxes on it, and now that might help them.
And this isn't going to be the end-all, be-all. This is just one tool of other tools that the town can implement. But with some of the properties, like you pointed out, Jutra Signs, Gap Building, the mill, it might be the difference between a developer looking at it and not.
Questions?
Yep.
The covenants that go with it, are there provisions that would prevent, or does the tax incentives go away? If I were a developer and I came in just simply to develop a property, get the improvement in the building, some tax incentives for a year or two, then sell the building without actually doing any marketing, would those tax incentives go away once the building changes ownership? Does it go with the building versus the owner? How does
It
that
goes.
work?
The way I understand it is, it stays with the building, provided that public benefit remains and that the rehabilitation was completed. Now, if somebody gets 90% done and then they stop that construction that they were doing that they promised the Board of Selectmen, then you may be able to go back. But no, selling the property to somebody who's still going to provide that economic vitality to the downtown and provide that public benefit, it would not cease with a change in
What
ownership.
would some of the examples of the covenants that would be?
Well, some of them, they require that you have flood insurance and liability, all the proper insurance, and then if the building were to burn down or flood out and be damaged, then you may be able to go back and get your taxes depending on the circumstances. And then it also has a time frame that can be up to twice as long. So if you give 5 years of tax relief, with the covenants, you can require up to 10 years that public benefit be there.
Thank you.
So the taxes are only, the taxes are not taken on the improvements only. So if I have a $500,000 structure and I put in $500,000 of investment, I'd still be paying my taxes on that original $500,000. It could be frozen on the additional assessment of, say, $500,000, if that's what the property value went up to, for up to 5 years. Then after that, the town would then be getting that higher
Correct,
tax.
yes. Yeah. You would, when an application would come in, the way I would envision, and I've talked to Scott Bartlett about it, is the assessor would need to go out, double-check the current assessment, and say, okay, what's really there? This is what the current assessment is. And then it would be freeze for whatever time period is agreed upon. But after that finite amount of time passes, the town would then realize that increase in the revenue for that increased valuation.
Are there any other questions from the board? Anyone from EDC like to make a comment? And if you just come on up here so that the microphone can pick you up.
Dan Reedy, Chair of the Council. I just wanted to say that, so if it's something that you think is advisable for us to pursue further, then that's what we would do. We would begin to look more deeply at it. We didn't want to do that until we first spoke to you, and sort of get the authorization from you to do more research, to maybe examine where might be the appropriate places in all of the town of Goffstown to consider identifying parts of the town that are appropriate for this kind of 79E. So
All right, we did, just so you know, we did receive a letter, I don't have a copy of it, but it's over there, from the Goffstown Main Street program. You wouldn't mind, I'll just read it into the record, it's pretty short. Dear Selectmen, the Board of Directors of the Goffstown Main Street program joins me in endorsing the adoption of RSA 79E, Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive, and we hereby are recommending that this year's town meeting address this important legislation. As the community's economic revitalization and historic preservation partner, we agree that the provisions of the statute will act as an incentive for improvements and investment in our commercial district. The legislation has strong safeguards for both the public and private sectors by ensuring that a process is in place to determine and evaluate the public benefit of proposed rehabilitations. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the town on bringing this legislation to our community. Thank you for your consideration. For the Board of Directors, Karen Henderson, President. So, we just got this in our, I just saw that in our mailboxes today.
Right, today,
So, before we have any type of deliberations on this, any questions for EDC? Does the board wish to take action upon it now and give guidance to the EDC, or would you wish to sleep on this and talk about it? Okay.
Well, one of the things that, while we were watching this, that I was trying to envision in my mind was, if we designated an area, I mean, it's going to be tough, perhaps, to find the boundaries, because you say you have to designate an area, and I don't know if the statute is specific that you have to have draw a line, let's say. I mean,
it's not specific, but I would say that would probably be advisable to say this is the downtown, this is the village area that this applies to.
All right, and the reason why I'm saying that is because by doing that, I would just hate to have an issue where you have, let's say, one or two properties that are, let's say, across the street from where you draw this line, and then, you have a problem. So that's why I meant, the question was, is how specific do you have to be? So that would give us the flexibility that if it was across the street or just on the outside of that line, that we could be flexible, I guess.
And I think if you don't include a specific property in a designated area, the way I understand is the only option you'd have is to go back to town meeting and redraw the lines.
Okay.
So I think, if the board wishes to go forward with it, I think that then the charge to EDC will be, okay, you're going to be tasked with drawing these lines and making it as inclusive as possible, being visionary and saying, okay, here's where it even, might be. Because one of the things that I can foresee, if this were to go forward, is that you have a lot of, homes. I've seen a lot of applications where some of these bigger homes in the community were then, made into, multi-unit. I'm assuming that if there was like a 4-unit or a 5-unit, some of these homes that are on North Mass that are converted into, would it be a karate studio, or if it's senior housing or elderly housing, assisted living, I'm sorry. Those, I'm assuming, would qualify for this or am I incorrect?
They may, depending on
the percentage of
they may meet the percentage, but then that, again, is the discretion of the Board of Selectmen.
I hear you. But it's not, I don't want to give, there shouldn't be an impression this is only for the behemoth project. This could literally be, a Victorian house that may need, that's going to be made into affordable housing or made into a multi-unit complex or a business, or subdivided into a law office and a doctor's office or something.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
So let me clarify the process, is that a definition of an area is devised, and could be by parcels, a collection of parcels, or some other set of lines, and that's on a town warrant.
Yes, that would be placed on a town
And then, in the future, owners of the structures would come to the Board of Selectmen with justifications for the improvements they're making and then the tax relief.
On a
So
case-by-case
basis.
You're correct, yes.
Taking a step back in that process, before it gets to town meeting, does EDC envision getting this information out to all those property owners and explaining this whole concept to them?
I think you definitely would need an education process, and I talked to Robbie Grady about it, and she is willing to help out with some of that education process, definitely in the village, and that can just be expanded to the Pinardville or any other area that gets designated. But I think
that's an important step in the process.
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, one of the I'll just get to you in a second, Dan. I think one of the, things that I've learned, from this process as well as others is that, in speaking with Bill, and I think he wrote some sort of op-ed piece or something on a website, there's this notion that, small businesses need some sort of a tax relief. And I want to go back to what you said early on. We, as Goffstown or any town and municipality, just cannot create laws on our own. It has to be enabling legislation at the state level to allow us to do that. This offers some flexibility, to a community if they so choose to do it. We do not have the ability, if a business right now is struggling, to say, okay, we'll work with you on your tax bill. We do not have that ability. There are laws on the books that allow us to defer taxes for the elderly, issue tax abatements if it goes through that whole process, but we couldn't help a small business on their tax bill or a private homeowner even if we wanted to, because there's certain process that the state allows you to do. This, on the other hand, is something completely different. This is more, in my opinion, this is more visionary. This will, I think, it becomes clear to me that just a couple of key projects here could spark, development, which is new construction, which can even apply to this. And I think that's the key. And I think if you look at Manchester, I think Manchester is a good example, in my opinion, where they did some key moves. Revitalizing the mills is one, where all of a sudden more and more people started to open up businesses there. And I remember when I first moved here, downtown was like half vacant, and they had to do something. And revitalizing those mills was part of that process. I think, there is some concern from, businesses in downtown especially, because there are some vacancies right now. But we have to be proactive, and I think this, to me personally, I think this is a step in the right direction. I'm going to support this because I don't see a downside to it. I just only see upside to this. So, Dan, then I'll get John.
I just wanted to say that we'd be happy to return to you when we've done some due diligence and really have something to share with you, if that's what you'd like. So, when we've done a potential part of the town or parts of the town to consider.
John, you wanted to add something?
I just want to say something that I mentioned at the last EDC meeting, was that as time goes by and select boards change to new members over the years, I want to make sure that there's still going to be the fair and the fair practice that the boards will be, they may be one way or another, and things change and boards change their opinions in groups sometimes. We want to make sure that this will be continued to be open.
I think that's one of the things that we would look to, I think obviously one of the issues is to define what the boundaries are. But I think equally as important is what is the process going to look like so that it is fair and it's impartial, regardless of whether or not this is current board or 1, 5, 10, 15 years from now, so that a person who is always going to get a fair opportunity to present a rehabilitation plan and be heard. And I think that's going to be the part of the charge is going to be, if we're going to do this, is that we have that fair process in place before we even have the voters vote on it, so they know that it's going to be fair for you or anybody else who wants to do this. But I just see it as a significant upside because it might be that little tiny incentive that a developer or a business owner needs to jumpstart their business. And I think it'll help. We've got, I mentioned some, 3 or 4 off the top of my head that I'm aware of. There might be others that they're key, I think. And just like sometimes when you open up a strip mall, you have an anchor store. I think we have to be cognizant. We need anchors of businesses where others then come in and they see that this one person is investing, and now others start to invest as well.
One of the things, though, I just want to make sure that we all understand, this tax relief is not giving anybody relief or on their current tax bill. This is on the improvements that they're making that we're really deferring the taxes for a period of time. So I just want to make it clear so that everybody understands that you're not reducing somebody's taxes at the expense of the other taxpayers. They're doing an improvement, they're investing a significant amount of capital for the improvement, and the tax assessment on the new assessment, up above and beyond what they're already paying taxes on, that's the portion that has the deferment.
Correct.
And I think the key word here is tax relief incentive. It's an incentive for you to invest into your business, and I think that's a critical point that we're going to have to let the community know that we're not losing current tax dollars. We're just trying to create an incentive for people to reinvest in their buildings and in their businesses, so that they're going to be viable long term. I think this is a smart approach. Anybody else want to be heard? I've already expressed my opinion on it. I don't know how everybody else feels. I
just want to jump in a little bit.
Yep.
Part of, sitting in on EDC, part of the process coming here tonight was to see if it had legs, and I think looking around it does, and we didn't want to utilize resources until we got an understanding that the board would be in support of it. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great presentation, Derek. It looks good. I think it's something we should proceed on as far as going the next step further to seeing where these zones would be, what type of area might entitle, and probably, if we could, going forward, just maybe some options within those plans as far as what those zones would look like.
Anyone else? David, you want to offer your opinion?
I'm looking forward to seeing what the zones are for the towns. I don't see any downside for this because we're encouraging improvement, and picking up on a point that Selectman has made, that the areas have to be supportive of each other. You can't improve or revitalize one side of the street and let the other side of the street continue to deteriorate with no incentive. It's a package for a whole area, and so I would look forward to a definition of what those areas could be in this town.
And speaking of whole area, it's not just a village piece. It can touch the village. It can touch Bernardville.
Well, that's the point that I made. That's the point that I made. Before, is that this is not a Goffstown Village issue. I think this is a Goffstown program, which must include Bernardville, because there's plenty of properties in Bernardville that could use the ability to have this incentive. And I think that'll help everyone, and maybe even parts of Grassmere as well. So.
Does it apply to structures which are educational?
If it provides a public benefit, and I think the legislature has made it broad enough that it may apply to that.
Yeah, I think what's important here, though, that we have to keep in mind, and I'm sure economic development will, that they're key on this, is that you have, even though you have properties that have existing businesses in them, there are a lot of people who are, this far away from being able to get a loan to make the improvements on the property. And sometimes when they need an improvement on a property which could vastly increase their business and improve, the entire town. So there is a benefit there. So this can have a potential for many of the businesses that are already operating.
I think that's an excellent point. I mean, and there have been a couple of businesses that have gone out of business in Goffstown over the last couple of months because of they needed to upgrade, whether it be fire suppression, there was some structural issues with buildings, et cetera. And these folks maybe did not have the money to do that, and therefore they weren't able to lease out their building to a tenant, and therefore the business goes out. And that's unfortunate, but it's programs like this that would give somebody that opportunity, to reinvest in their buildings and potentially keep more businesses going. So I see the need as yesterday, not in the future. I think we needed something like this, prior.
One key thing, though, that I see with this is in today's economy, when a business goes for financing, they cannot use, let's say a business owner comes in and says, I want to make these improvements in my property, I'm going to increase the area that I can lease out, and I can get a lease. Well, unless you have a lease in hand, they can't use that. But when you have something like this that gives you numbers and says, Because one of the other things they look at is, okay, you do these improvements, your taxes go up, so now your expense side of the ledger goes up also. But now if you have something that you can show legitimately with the town that, okay, but the taxes are not gonna go up that much, they're gonna be this much instead of that much, then that helps also, because now that helps their ability to pay back that loan for 5 years.
I'm gonna put a couple of you on the spot, hopefully you won't mind, but Tony, you represent a lot of, developers. Is it safe to say that they would support something like this in terms of being able to then reinvest in in a business?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And you've already identified a bunch of properties that would potentially really benefit from this. And I frankly agree with you that it needs to include more than the Main Street area. It needs to include additional parts of the village. It needs to include Pinardville in a much more serious way, frankly, because that's an area that can see a lot of rehabilitation over the next 5 to 10 years. And I'd also point out that you can stop at any time just by going back to the town meeting and revoking the authority. So, it's something that you can test out and decide if in fact it's working for you.
John?
One of the other members of the wasn't able to be here tonight, but he said that he's been working on it in another town, Pembroke?
Pembroke, I think.
Pittsfield. And he said that it's been happening for quite a while, 4 years, 3 years, quite a substantial amount of time with no takers. So something else that we may want to be looking at is, what are we going to do to get takers, really to put this in action once we have it, rather than just have it, do all this work.
So it's a matter of, once we do it, if it gets approved at town meeting, we have to market this as part of our EDC program to say, okay, and I think that goes in concert with what you're trying to do with the website and trying to, I guess, promote certain parcels, for whether it be new development or redevelopment.
And just to follow up, and for the people that are going to be responsible of doing this rehab, and somebody's got to have some money first to be able to get this benefit. So we have to make sure that we have to make sure the business is good enough, the tenants are good enough, and everybody's supporting each other to have this program continue to go.
Right, and I think.
And sometimes maybe some sort of relief.
Sometimes, I think, John, you can appreciate this, is I know that it's very true, and Steve Langley, jump in if you want, but with the regulations that are now in place, and we'll use the automotive business for one, if you want to go and expand your operations, it triggers now changes where, you have EPA regulations, you have, and Steve, you probably know more about this, you have to have, the containment for chemicals, and so now you want to expand your business, but in order to do it, it's a substantial cost, and to know that you could expand your business, still comply with all EPA and all these other regulations that are out there, that you have some incentive, and that the numbers work. And I think, Steve, as a developer, right, I mean, you gotta make the numbers work. Is it fair to say that this is just maybe one more tool that we'll have in our belt?
Absolutely, I don't see any downside to this. I think it would really be helpful to the town.
All right.
I'm picking up on a few key words here, and one of them, because we've been talking about rehabilitation of existing buildings, but it also says here replacement of buildings. That then qualifies.
Yeah.
It does. It's more stringent to show that you have a public benefit, especially, but if it's a newer building that replacement makes more sense, then yes, it is a possibility.
And not only try to rehab something that's 50 years old, but
Yep.
remove it and put up an entirely new structure.
Yes.
What something like that possibly could help then is if a person were to be able to, say, buy 2 properties, remove the 2 buildings and build a new building
Bigger.
on the 2 lots, that could be 3 or 4 times the size of those other 2 lots with a whole new configuration, and there is definitely a public benefit.
Mm-hmm. Many of our older center of the village or center of Pinard lots are small, where combining lots could be beneficial.
I have not really heard anybody that has any concerns with this, now is a good time to speak up if you do. I think the consensus of the board, if you know, I don't know if we want a motion, we can do a motion, but I think the consensus of the board is to allow you to do your due diligence and start to create these zones, and also to work towards a fair process, as John mentioned. I think the key here is that it has to be a fair process for all individuals, and it's not, and one that's going to be sustaining over a duration of time, not just, 1 or 2 years. We have to make sure that happens. So,
Would the articles have to be one article for each zone?
I think you could do it that way. If you had any fear of the whole package not passing, you could break it up that way, absolutely.
I would just assume do it one, because I don't want to pit one part of town versus another.
Okay.
I process my personal
Didn't know whether,
opinion.
I'm asking, that would be great, and I'm just, whether it was a requirement and something you've read.
No, and it's not very specific in the statute.
All right, I think, Sue, do you think a motion would be better? Or, I don't see any harm in doing it.
Depends on your preference.
I don't see a harm in a motion. It makes it official.
It makes it more clear.
Yeah.
Pretty direct.
Yeah. So do I have a motion from any of the members?
I'll make a motion that we authorize EDC to go forward with a plan to bring back to the Board of Selectmen incorporating the RSA 79.
To include boundaries and
Come up with a plan.
9 yards.
Okay.
Let them develop a plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Fournier. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I personally think this is probably one of the most important things that EDC is going to work on. It's has a lot of good potential. So thank you.
Derek's also here to show you the webpage development for EDC.
And again,
we've been waiting for this.
And again, RSA 79E is one of the tools, but another tool that I think we're excited about is to start to see the economic development webpage come together. And Neil and I have worked together. This is something that Steve had developed before he left, to have more of an economic development presence on the website, and to try and bring some other businesses to town. And again, we've got most information that developers would look for, and specifically one of the first things that Neil developed that we think will be helpful is a site finder to show where potential development is located. And this will be something that we will continuously update to keep it refreshed so all the information is up to date. But it just provides an idea of what lots are available. And then we've created links and basically a property listing sheet, similar to what a realtor would use, but showing where it's located, what type of utilities are available, the economic revitalization zones that were recently approved in April by the Department of Resources and Economic Development. We do have 4 of those zones in town now. And on some, if they have conditional approval for site plan, there'll be a link down below that we can click on, and people can see what that site is.
This is a good pitch for updating our aerial photography of the town, because it doesn't show development on that slide.
Yes, that is that we were limited when we put these together.
Come around the budget time? Just go to Google Earth.
To 2010, and those are things that we'll be looking to incorporate some, and then the other thing that's now available online too are the GIS maps, which will show. We'll give people and developers an opportunity to explore sites as they come in. They can look at a site and they can see what's available and get some information on those, whether they want to see what the utility systems maps are, and see where sewer is available, whether they want to look at contours to give them an idea of the topography and what can be usable land. And this is all something that can be done before they even have to come in to talk to any of us at Town Hall. And then finally, through a generous donation from the, let's see, and what I should have done while I was here was from the GIS system. And this is, again, the Industrial Corporation made this available to a developer can come in at any time and see what the property is assessed at and get that information so they can start to put together a financial package so they can know, what is available to them. And then finally, the other thing that we're excited about is the new look of the website. I'll just go back real quick, and when you look, economic development, where is it? It is on the front page, and it's there if you know but right here, this would be the new website homepage, and right up front will be economic development. And the thing we envision doing here is changing these pictures to show development that is currently happening. Steve's project on Tatro Drive would be a perfect example, as there's office space available in there, but also conditionally approved site plans that the Rite Aid facility has 2 retail pads.
Or conceptuals that have already
Or
been
conceptual
approved.
that have already gone before planning board. And that's what we're looking to do, to get those out and get that information. And then again, you've got your site finder, GIS, and everything else. So
How are other communities, are they receptive to partnering in terms of, surrounding communities, like Ware or other with us? Because, maybe there's something that we don't offer, but they do, or vice versa. I mean, sometimes when you network,
I know we've talked about it at the
Southern New Hampshire Planning.
at Southern New Hampshire Planning, but I haven't had talkings with those.
There's a double-edged sword. to
Yeah,
that.
no, it can cut both ways, yeah.
Yeah, because you might do that, and you might lose somebody
Yeah.
to the other community, so.
So we are excited, and again, this is just another one of the tools in the bag, along with the incentive relief. But excited to get.
I have to say, this is a big step from years ago on the old industrial council. There was another member, Roger, who lived in Bernardville. He and I tried to get together to try to do this in layers, because we envisioned a map. This was before we even had GIS, but I have a map so that you could somebody came into the town, you could look at the town and see where the sewer is, where the potential sewers, where all the different what we have here at our fingertips. And Roger and I, we tried to do that. We went and we looked, and whenever you try to get anything from the sewer commission, you have to go get these maps, unroll these big maps, and it's how do you incorporate that into another thing with the 3 different 2 precincts, Manchester Water, and all, and at least now it's all here. So it's a big improvement.
As a representative from the Goffstown Industrial Corporation, I want to specifically thank the Board of Selectmen for opening up really the policy, which previously had kept the assessment information and the GIS proprietary to the town. And that was really the impetus for us to support what's going on financially. I think Neil and Derek have done a tremendous job here. But it really started with a policy change by the Selectmen. So thank you for that. The second thing is, as your alternate representative to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, their Metro Center initiative with the Manchester Chamber of Commerce is intended to bring together this type of marketing and economic development information on a regional basis. And I know that Metro Center's next initiative is in fact to start to piece that together and actually provide services both to the towns and to developers to find sites and make projects work. That should be rolling out over the next year to 18 months, I think.
while we have you here, is there any new developments? I know that there was some workings on, was it Route 114 near St. Anselm's? I know that there was some things going back and forth there. Any status updates on that?
We actually just today sent a status report to St. Anselm College on the work that Southern New Hampshire Planning and the Goffstown Industrial Corporation have been doing. I introduced Derek into the mix a couple of weeks ago, June 15th, I think. He and I met with Father Mark Cooper, who's the treasurer, and Bill Furlong, the assistant treasurer over there. Our next step there is hopefully to put together a planning charrette that would include both St. Anselm Drive and Gentle Slopes development across the street. I also today spoke to Tim White, and I'm glad you raised this because I didn't have an opportunity to otherwise get on your agenda for this. But Tim White is the Chief Transportation Engineer at Southern New Hampshire Planning. The US DOT has come out with a $600 million grant program, which I am looking at with Tim to determine whether we can get some planning money from the federal DOT for what we would propose is a new intersection to service St. Anselm and Gentle Slopes on 114. That has some very tight deadlines coming up. There's a pre-application deadline of July, I think, 16th, and a final application deadline of August 23rd. So if Tim tells me that we might be able to put a program together, I'd probably like to be on your agenda because that is really a municipal application. It's going to have to come through the town, but it's all done electronically.
Well, this is not at the current intersection of St. Anselm's Drive. This is further down the road.
This would be where St. A's ends on, I guess, the west side of their property, and Gentle Slope ends at the east side of their property. And we've got a plan that would have a signalized intersection there that would service the industrial side, which is Gentle Slopes, and the commercial side, which would be the college side. We've gotten some preliminary indication from George Campbell, the DOT director or commissioner here in New Hampshire, thanks to John Heichel actually meeting with him, indicating that if we can get that intersection on the state's 10 years plan, he would work with us to get federal approval to open up the limited access highway for that purpose. And again, this Tiger 2 grant, which US DOT has come up with, is like exactly what we need to get some serious money to do some engineering, to do a traffic study, and to really get, from a preliminary perspective, the work needed to make that a real project.
Well, thank you for the are there any other updates for us? Or?
That's
No, it's good that we have all you guys here, and we can.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for all your work.
Nice job,
Appreciate it. Thank you, Derek. Nice job.
Nice job.
Thank you.
So Derek, would you include me on the email that you send out of your presentation, please? Thank you. Good. Promote it. More fun.
Goes up.
Absolutely. It's going to have to stop
The
3
posting.
times in Goffstown at least.
Does it just phase out?
It's an intersection.
That's one way.
We want to get the power off so the light.
Well, it has to like cool down.
Yeah.
Sausage.
But you should be able to.
Yeah.
Is that one? That's yours?
Carl, you always get beat up.
I'm supposed to pack it up for him at the end.
All right, I can take it.
All right, after Carl, we're going to go into non-public because we have a hiring thing for the police chief, and I don't want to keep him here all night. So,
And I'm going to be brief.
Carl, how you doing?
I'm doing very well.
You look good.
Doing
Tan?
very well. Very well.
So, Carl, you're here, and you're going to give us an update on the myriad of projects. I don't think anybody could be driving around Goffstown
Update
lately.
or updates?
Updates, as it was considerable. And I think the nice thing that I saw on here was that there's a lot of these updates are on our website. So I'm going to make a plug again. Please visit the town's website. If you do have questions about any of these projects, whether it be traffic, et cetera, it's a great resource to go to, and it saves. I know we're all trying to save money on different things, but the less time that we have to do on telephone inquiries, and people can find the information on their own, it's better for everyone. So we'll start with you, Carl, and let us know what's going on.
All right, well, thank you, and I want to start by apologizing to the board. When Selectman Pierce came to visit me last week, he said, it's been a couple months since we've heard about your construction schedule, and I said, I was thinking to myself, no, you should have got a thing last month, and after he left, I went back and looked at my monthly report that I'd sent, and sure enough, I'd forgotten to attach the attachment, which we had updated the spreadsheet, just forgot to attach it. So it has been a couple of months since you've seen that spreadsheet. First of all, let me start with probably what I consider to be the most critical project, which is the South Mast project. And if you looked at their original schedule, and I emailed, and I apologize, I didn't get it in time to print copies of it, but they did send late this afternoon an updated schedule, which we'll get up on the web page. But they ran into serious problems in production when they were working on East Union Street. That pipe on East Union is 20 feet deep, and the digging conditions were not very favorable. So they had a really tough go coming up East Union Street, which our panic was setting the whole project behind. And as you know, that's roundabout and the work, the crossing on South Mass, we really want to get done when school is out. We had a project meeting Thursday, and they were very aware of our concerns, and they had done a lot of kind of brainstorming how they can make up ground in the schedule. And I am very encouraged that I think we're still on track. I think we're still going to get there. As a matter of fact, we're very hopeful, although when I drove through today, I was a little panicked that they didn't get more done today than what I saw. But we're actually looking at base pavement on half the roundabout being on the inbound side, possibly being done the end of this week, because the grade in there won't change much, and there's no real utilities to install. So there should be a lot of paving done just prior to the 4th, which is really going to make that project look like it's progressing nicely. So I am still encouraged. I've been sending around updates. As far as you remember, at town meeting, they approved our town meeting approved us borrowing the money for that last phase of Pine Ridge. The holdup there is DES does not have that money available to them yet to reallocate. Apparently there's a project in Plymouth that they're expecting to have surplus money. However, the town of Plymouth has not yet released that money for DES to redistribute. So everything's kind of in a holding pattern until the town of Plymouth does their thing. It's causing a little bit of a scheduling problem for us, but we're trying to be diligent on it, and we've actually begun the paperwork process with DES ahead of time. So the paperwork will get there prior to them being able to sign it. But anyway, doing what we can to keep that on track. The Mass Road Sewer project is going fairly well. The one problem we ran into on Mass Road is they did hit ledge. There was an area in Phase 1 that we were worried they would get into ledge, and sure enough they did. Given the close proximity and the age of the structures down there, they want to do very detailed pre-blast surveys before they start actually blasting. So they have opened up Phase 2 and begun work on Phase 2. So they just sent around a revised schedule for that. Again, I just got the actual schedule today, so we'll get it up on the web page. But the project in general seems to be moving along pretty well, and they seem to be managing the traffic fairly well, given what we expected down there. Project that the Selectmen aren't directly involved in, but the Sewer Commission has kind of taken on the slope stabilization project. I believe, well, I'm quite certain we've gotten concurrence from DES on the wetlands permit, so the formal application went in this week. I expect it to be a pretty quick turnaround, and the bid documents just landed in my inbox today while I was down in Milford with Attorney Drescher. So hopefully I can get those turned around this week and get that project out to bid. The Lynchville-Danis water main project we're going to talk about in detail, I think, in a little bit. We attached a lot of documents, though, and I mentioned that we went down to see Attorney Drescher today, we being Megan and I. Attached to this report, I gave you a kind of Megan's checklist of all the things that are involved. This project is extremely complex, and Sue actually might have saved us a lot of time. We called Local Government Center and started talking to them, and this was at Attorney Drescher's prompting, that we look at whether or not our insurance, we can get a separate rider to cover the town's liability on this project. And that prompted us to call up there with some very specific questions. And we found out the town of Londonderry has done a project similar to this. And as a matter of fact, it didn't go so well, and litigation pursued. Londonderry's actually done two of these. The first one they did was a sewer job, which involved litigation due to workmanship, and it was very similar. It was the town. It wasn't really a town project. They were just trying to help the residents out. So the second time around, they took a different approach. They did a water project, which is underway as we speak. So Dave Karen, the town manager down there, is getting the documents together that Londonderry did use, going to send them to us, and Attorney Drescher is going to review the work they did and help us craft this section of the bid specs the way, well, I don't know if we'll do it exactly the way Londonderry did, because it seems very cumbersome, but we're gonna take a look at it. And obviously, we need to focus on protecting the town from that liability as we get through this project. You can see, if you look at Megan's checklist, there are still a great many steps that need to be done. What our intention is, if the board concurs, I think we'll put this checklist right up on the webpage and update it regularly, so you'll actually be able to see the checks. When Selectman Pierce came to visit me, he was very much looking for a letter that would give us some kind of schedule and date certain. And so many of these steps are beyond our control and involve other agencies. I just don't think we'd be smart to commit to an actual date. I do have a draft letter, though, that I'll circulate. The copies there for everybody, which more or less explains the process. I'm recommending we attach this checklist right to it, and it points folks at the web page. Megan and I talked today about maybe we want to set up, this right now, Lynchville Park, everything, all the information is under the ARA portion of the web page, which this is not an ARA project. So to cut down on the confusion, we were talking about maybe starting a whole separate spot on the web page specific to this project. So I can work that detail out with Neil tomorrow, but our recommendation is that we send this letter with the information, with the checklist, and we keep the checklist on the web page that people can check it and get updates regularly. Attorney Drescher is going to try to get through this. A lot of it depends on how quickly we can get the information from Dave Karen. But we'll try to get through all the work that he's going to look at. Obviously, we want to get this out to bid as soon as possible, but we need to make sure that...
So, long story short here is that the town is going to act as a facilitator here. We cannot, we're a pass-through.
Correct.
We are not, because we cannot incur, we're not allowed to dictate what goes on in someone's private property. And this is actually, this STAG grant is kind of unusual in the sense that this is federal grant money going towards, I guess, a private resident hookup, which is kind of unusual. And I think that's why it's complex. If it was a municipal water project and we're connecting let's say we're connecting the Grassmere and the village precincts together, no big deal, it's in the town right away. But because we're actually going on people's property, or this contractor will be, we're not, the contractor is, we have to be like hands-off here. So we're just facilitating. And we're trying to get the best possible price by being that middleman for.
We're also
for the-
doing our due diligence in the selection of the vendor.
Right.
Yeah, which EPA, the STAG requirements are that there is a public procurement process. We have to establish a low bidder. Remember last time I was here, Selectman Campusano had a couple of creative ideas. We explored all of those, and we couldn't do them. So the best we can come up with is, we go out to bid, we identify a vendor. Attorney Drescher is trying to work through, do we want to even have a template contract where we spell out between the resident and the contractor in the bid document. And the reason, at first he was like, no, we want to stay right away from that. That's between them, let them deal with it. But then the more we talk through the liability on the town, it would obviously be full of indemnification language that the town is just the fiscal agent and we're not involved because, if you just think through just on the surface, just the surface layer, we're going into towns in the floodplain poking holes in cellars. Just think how many wet basements we'd be owning right from the get-go. The minute, the keys are turned over, everybody goes, oh, I never had water in my basement before. That was first thing that started ringing in my ear was that phone call just over and over again. So, and those kind of things, just as you walk through the process of going onto private property with these services, there's old septic systems in the way, there's, dug wells, there's a couple places.
And we
with wells
cannot
in
just simply be the facilitator of the money. I'm just saying.
This is as close to that as we
as
can
possible,
get.
but it's not,
Yeah.
I guess the cleanest way of doing this is like, okay, we'll administer the fund, federal government, and then the individual can pick whoever they want to hook up their water, you come back
Has
to
to be
us.
has
That
to
would
be
be
the
the
public.
easiest thing to do. This way, it's their option, who they got, it's their contract. Now, all of a sudden, this is a lot of work for the town.
It
I
is.
hope that the residents understand the fact that we cannot assume the liability of going on their property. It's just simply that this is something that the community cannot do.
Right.
And we're trying to, this is probably the next best thing, but the cleanest way, in my opinion, would be, we'll administer the money, but we can't do that.
But, right, but in the bid process, is there like a qualification, a pre-qualification of any vendors that are be bidding?
We could do that. I think we could, but it takes time.
Yeah.
Pre-qualification would add 3 weeks to
And does it have to be
process.
one vendor, or could it?
It does.
Okay,
That
it
was one
cannot
of
be
the
multiple vendors. Okay,
Yeah.
because multiple vendors would also then give the homeowner
Choice.
Choice.
Right.
So Carl, even though it would take longer up front on the pre-qualifications, would it save in the long run if you only have because if you don't have the pre-qualifications, then you can wind up with all these bids from people, and you're gonna have to go and
Read
invest.
through 'em.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to qualify them
So
anyway.
would it,
Yeah.
would
But
it be in the long term, be shorter in the long run?
I don't
Okay.
think so, because I think if we spell out the minimum qualifications that we want from the get-go, it'll make that weeding out very simple. They'll have to submit to us that they hit the marks on all the things we establish as pre-qualification items.
But I guess what I'm concerned about, though, is those certain things. What about if there's a problem? If you run into a problem, dealing with I'm just looking at in case problems arise. I just thought that he might be better off with the pre-qualifications.
Well, the process is the same, though. If you pre-qualify, you're gonna establish, these are the criteria we're looking for.
Okay.
You're gonna ask the vendors to submit a package that shows they meet that. We can build that into the bid, that same package could get built into the bid upfront and save.
Is one of those qualifications running a bureau check, Better Business Bureau check?
It can be,
Okay.
yeah, it can be,
D&B or anything like that,
Yeah.
is that
yeah,
built
absolutely.
in? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyway, so that's the best update. I wish I could tell you that the package is ready to go, but as you can see, there's still a lot to do.
Carl, thank you. I did suggest, once Carl said how hard it is to put down a specific date, that everything will be wrapped up. And that is best explained by the complexity of a checklist that the engineering staff knows has to be done. So the checklist and keeping that updated on the website provides a wealth of information to the residents, as, you know, they print it out and they see the changes from week to week to week. Okay, paragraph 2. Once a contractor is selected, the property owner will be notified of that contractor's name and pointed in how to contact him. I thought we were talking about the town selecting several contractors from which the residents could pick.
It wasn't acceptable.
Do that.
It wasn't, okay, I missed that wasn't acceptable
Now,
discussion.
the other thing, and I want to discuss this with the board, and maybe we need.
So is, I'm not sure, excuse me, so
Go ahead.
this one contractor will then have, will be the installer of choice for 200 water connections.
Well, it's more 75 to 100, I
75.
About 100.
70, okay.
Yeah. What Londonderry did the second time around was they took even more of a hands-off approach, where they kind of forced the neighborhood to form as an association.
Well, it was already association.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how it differs from our project.
Yeah.
So they made all the decisions in the whole grant process, in the selection of the contractor, in paying the bills, and when it was paid, setting it all up, so.
More similar to what we did with the
Medville,
Medville Village folks.
on the CDBG grant.
Really hands-off. We're just passing the funds through. That's why Bill needs to really look through those documents and see what of that we can or cannot.
Could we do that? I mean, it would require, I'm not.
Start an association?
We have we have all independent homeowners down there. That would be a lion's task to
Okay.
This
organize
is the only
that.
thing they have in common, I think.
Right.
They have a lot of things they
Anything else?
not in common.
I'm just gonna go back to this, the checklist thing, and I like the checklist, but I have to admit, I think that dates are needed. And I don't have any problem with there being a reason why the date didn't get met. But there's got to be I think there's gotta be target dates. And if, good case in point, what you just explained to us with regard to the sewer project, we hit ledge, we had a problem there. Or we had, the date was supposed to be now, but it's delayed 2 to 4 weeks because of X, Y, and Z. And then it's in red and people understand why, but at least it shows a progression. I just think that there's gotta be benchmarks in here for when we're gonna see things being done, and I think, that's just my opinion.
I was going with what you said. I think it'd be difficult to try to put some timelines on some of these out items.
But for a group.
But I'm assuming these go in order.
Somewhat.
So if we're at the, verify in writing, your next one's review 40 CFR Part 31. What's the anticipated date for that? When that one's met, what's the next? This way, when somebody looks at it, they can say, okay, we're here, and this is the date the next step should be completed, versus looking at a checklist and not knowing when it was last updated, when the next check mark is coming. You're not looking at the project end and trying to estimate that, you're just looking at the next step. Trying to say how many weeks out that is, or, what the date is for that next piece.
I know you got a lot on your plate, and I'm not trying to be overly critical. I think everyone recognizes what you have on your plate. But by the same, this whole thing about communication, project management is all about, you've got the dates. You have your construction meetings, and there's dates on there. And then they'll tell you why they can and cannot meet those dates. I just think that those should be shared at some point on this website so that people understand what's going on. And if we can't meet them, then there's a reason why we can't meet them. And anybody who's done any type of like home improvement in their house knows that the best plans don't happen because one guy doesn't come, there's a material delivery that gets missed, and I just did some home improvement around my house, and it was 2 or 3 weeks later than I thought it would be. That's life, but at least I kind of knew, and I got an update from the contractors, here's why, where it rained, so I kind of knew why, so that's it. Phil, you want to add something?
The only thing that
I have a concern about with the dates. If this checklist is gonna be online, and we're gonna encourage people to go onto the website and look at that, and then we have these dates. And, you know, how you put them down, I mean, is it a target, okay? I mean, we can be sitting here and we can all be on the same page as understanding that the purpose of these is just so that we have a date, and that doesn't mean that that's what it is. But now, remember, you have other people who are in their own lives, and some of them need the water or anticipating the water for different reasons what their expectation and their anticipation is and how long they've been waiting for this. And they see these dates. And we come up to this date and they, you know, and maybe it doesn't get updated every day. And they come up and they look and they say, well, today is that date. How come it's not done? It's difficult because you put those dates and you're going to get people that expect that to be the date.
Okay, in a second, Carl. Steve.
And I'm not just gonna talk about this project here. I don't think it matters if it's the Circle or down in Penarville where they're putting in the sewer line. Businesses down there are looking for dates. When I say dates, I realize we're not putting in a hard date. I understand the difficulties, but at least there has to be some type of idea of when it's gonna happen. I know the businesses down there are worried about which way the traffic's going. They're looking at the traffic count. They're wondering how it affects business. You're gonna have people coming through the traffic circle wondering how is it progressing on time or not. And I don't think, and I agree with Scott, that doesn't mean necessarily that this is a date, it's, you know, all or nothing thing, but it might be a moving target, but you have an idea, and you have an idea why that target moved, but it doesn't matter what project it is. All people are gonna be wondering what is going on. I think it was one of the problems we ran into when we did the Grassmere Circle. In other words, you know, if you were to sit down with you during the Grassmere Circle, you would say, here's what some of the things we ran into. All of a sudden, there was, I believe one of it was the drainage going down, et cetera. When those things changed, in other words, when those things change, you can see the change that's going on, people have an understanding what's going on. I think we need to be somewhere close.
It allow a targeted date. I don't think anybody expects it will, you know, this to be rock solid, but a range of dates is important for any project for a multitude of reasons. One, whether it's this whole issue of water hookups, people may make that decision, you know what, I ain't waiting. I'm getting it done. I don't care about this grant. And let them make that decision, but be fair to them. If you're a business owner on any one of these projects that are going on right now, the more knowledge that they have, they will make business decisions on what type of marketing or advertising they're doing. Why have an advertising campaign to bring business in if I can't, if people are not really coming to my business because of the Kelly Street Bridge construction and all this construction going on? Maybe I'm a person who's thinking about, you know what, this has kind of slowed down my business. I was thinking about taking a vacation and shutting down my business in August. I'm doing it now in July. It's these types of things that people, you have to be fair to folks, and I will defend DPW and Carl, you to the hilt, if we give them it and we're off by it and we give an explanation, we gave them something. But I think we have to be fair to the residents and to businesses by giving them some degree of when these things are going to get finished.
Would the board be happy, there's 7 bold titles that are the major
Target dates for those.
Would the board be happy if each one of those 7 major phases have the words target start date and then
Anticipated.
Anticipated,
or
yeah.
anticipated
target.
and anticipated ending date?
Yeah.
And this on each one of those 7 areas. And for an engineering flow chart, they may overlap for valid reasons.
Right. And then if there is, I don't know, I think it definitely it's an accountability thing for one, and if there is going to be a delay, then we let, obviously, if your target date, like you've run into some issues right now, so you've been able, on the sewer one, you said, okay, we hit some ledge, so now they have to go and do some preliminary blasting investigation, but now the crew is working, they're making up that time as they're going someplace else while that's being done, so you're kind of still on track, but it's just we're just updating it. Right. And that's all. And I think, because I know that's you, Steve, you've talked to some business owners, I know I have too. I mean, this is their livelihood. And they just need to make decisions. And I think for residents, same thing applies.
I guess the only thing I would say, and I understand everything that you're talking about, but I view my job this year, and I've been saying this kind of all, yes, we're managing projects, but my job as director is I'm trying to manage more than progress. I'm trying to manage image, and I'm trying to manage every missed date is a failure. And I'm glad you brought up the other roundabout, because we could have talked that schedule to death, but just think about the miscommunication of the $830,000 cost. From day one, we explained what was involved in that project. People pull out what they want to hear, and then they run with it, and they never let go of it. So no matter how many times you update it, no matter how many times you give the reasons, somebody sticks it in their mind that you said you were going to be done in August. Now it's August and it's not done. Failure. Boom. So I'm managing expectations, not, more than I'm managing deadlines. I want DPW to survive this year, and I don't want everybody to think back of 2010 as, oh, jeez, those guys got everything wrong. Every single project went wrong. They missed every date they put out there, because it is fluid. Everything changes. They started digging on East Union Street, first bucket. Creosote, soap, railroad timbers. Nobody knew they were there. Oh, call in the hazmat team, get the whole hazardous materials people out there. The whole project shut down for 2 days while they did soil samples, and you just, you don't know. There's no way to know. You don't know what you're going to pull up when you dig it in the ground. So it's like, it wouldn't be hard. I could sit down and in about 20 minutes we could throw some dates on this, but I guarantee you we wouldn't hit a single one of them. Not one would we hit.
But when you do any type of project management, it doesn't matter if it's this, or you always build in contingencies like this, so you give yourself a buffer. But I just don't, I don't know, granted, your projects are huge compared to the average Joe just doing something around their house, but when they hire a contractor, they ask that question: when are you going to start? When are you going to finish? And anybody who has half a brain on any type of home remodel, you might as well add another 50% to it, and that's how you plan, because you know something's going to happen. And I think you have to do that same thing. You have to manage that expectation, and with that is building in pretty large contingencies of time for the unexpected, like hitting ledge or hitting unknowns or having a permitting problem, or all of a sudden a problem with a contractor or things of that nature. But I don't think that's not unusual, but I just think you have to just be careful of where that expectation is. Don't, as Steve, you said this before, we can't overpromise and underdeliver. And I think you're managing that. I think we recognize that. Nick, you wanted to add something?
I was going to say, I think the key is just being open and clear. When an issue arises, be clear about what it was. And regardless of what you do, I think you're always going to have that Monday morning quarterback. You're going to have the individual who second guesses what you do, critiques what you do. But I don't think we can manage our projects or manage what we do in trying to communicate by those individuals. For every one individual like that, there's 100 residents or businesses that could make good use of this information. And they'll appreciate the fact that you're trying to communicate when the projects will. They're not as vocal as that one individual.
Well, it's always that way. It's always 10% of people always have something to say, that's negative, even if they're getting free money.
But if we don't put out any information, those same people will be crying.
And as well as the majority of the 90%.
I was just going to say, and that vocal person, sometimes it won't matter what the process is, and you know enough on that. But it's not meant to speed up the process or anything of that nature. It's just meant to have an understanding of where it's going and a reasonable expectation.
The thing too, Carl, and again, as selectmen, we're privileged to a lot more information than the average Joe. But a little thing that I picked up on when I was doing some reading earlier today was, we as a board, and your department, we have to communicate with the public. Yeah, there is a lot going on. There's a lot of things that the community, isn't aware of. And when I was looking through some of the minutes, simple things like, cleaning out these detention ponds and all this stuff that you have to do. This is general maintenance. And as we approve more and more developments that have these, and I'm not good at the planning stuff, but you guys are. But there's a lot of structures that have to be maintained, and then there's the regular road work, and then there's all of the DES and the stormwater, and the list goes on and on. So when people start saying, oh, what are they doing? It's our job to say, it's not just about when you see the guy that holds a sign that says slow and stop. It's about all the other things these are regulations that we have to comply with, engineering, and we get, these are huge, huge things, and it's the garbage, and that's all. That's where we have to, do a better job, because there are a lot of things that even as a selectman, I read it, I'm like, ooh, I forgot about that. They have to do all that,
Mike, I'm remiss, Mike sent me a picture of the whiteboard in our conference room, and he wanted me to attach it to this, and I forgot to do that, but that's on top of all of this, is the.
I guess I've been hearing the board, and the other members of the board wants dates on this, Carl,
and we want Mike.
A couple
Hillhouse.
of them said that they'll back you to the nth degree.
Yes, I heard that part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Make sure that's
And
in
it's
the minutes.
documented by name. In case this checklist is going out as an attachment to the letter, in case it does get separated from the letter, put right up at top, next to the updated date, see www for weekly updates.
Yes.
So that they know that they'll be told, right in this letter, that if they don't check that website, then they don't know that the dates have changed.
You're gonna have to put several places that they're only target dates.
Targets,
Because
big
what you
bold
don't
letters.
want is to have it in one place,
Not others.
and then somebody look at
And-
that date and not see that, it's say, well, I didn't know, I didn't see that.
Carl, in paragraph 2, you mentioned that a property owner may want to investigate a low-interest loan, U.S. Department of Agriculture, by a phone number. Devil's advocate here. Were I to call that number today and say, I'm interested in the Lynchville Danish Park water project and a loan, would the staff know what they're talking about?
I copied that number and information right out of a email from Rick Skarinka from DES. So I don't know how much he has told them. I have not communicated with them. So it's probably something we should do. But knowing him, he at least talked to somebody over there and before he sent me the information.
Double check that at least they're aware of this project and they don't tell the resident something we don't want them to hear. Yes, we'll work with you.
I don't think it's appropriate to discuss it now, but I would like to share personally my edits of this letter to make it more user-friendly, but I'll do that offline.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll email it to Sue and you guys can just buff it up however you want.
I think it's a ton of information that is possible. We'll go over a lot of it.
Megan,
It's a lot of information.
when Megan reviewed this at the end of today, she said the same thing, and she actually thought about, similar to this checklist, taking this into more like a bullet.
Yep.
These things.
That's exactly where I was going on it, so, okay.
Okay.
Now
So
we're
next,
on road plan.
yeah, next on the list is our updated road plan. We did update the overall spreadsheet. As you can see, most of the low-hanging fruit is complete, with the exception of the ones that we were tripping over other projects to get to them. We do have our second excavator coming next week, so we'll be able to get 2 digging crews out, which we've done the last several years to get things moving along. We've begun out on Montalona Road prepping. That's a pretty good size prep job. Now we do have, and I just want to double check with the board, we met with the library folks. We have a plan for the library parking lot. Our thought was that the crew that does Montalona, instead of moving them to whichever street they had next on the list, we could move them to the library. It seems to fit that time schedule, which we're thinking is probably about 3 weeks out from now. Seems to fit in a window of library programming that they aren't using that lot. It's probably going to be 4 or 5 days, start to finish, to get all that grubbed, prepped, trees out. But like I said, if you want us to, that's, I think, where we would recommend plugging it in before we move over to Moset and Miles.
Board okay with that? Yep.
It's on the schedule.
As far as other, I won't go through each and every project.
Need any traffic control over there?
Just kind of real quick, I'll see if there's anything that jumps off here at me that I think we need to cover.
We were down to DPW staff is very busy.
Well, I'm looking at the actual road plan. I'm just seeing if there's any. One thing we're struggling with is the sidewalk, the ADA sidewalk project. That needs not a lot of work, but it needs an overall plan where we want to do work, some general specs, and we're just looking at what's on the plate for engineering. So that one is going to be a challenge for us, which is why we put the note there with just everything else that we got ahead of it. Other than that, everything's fairly straightforward, I think.
See, I don't know what everybody else feels, but I really like this a lot. This is really good. Very, very beneficial. Just a quick snapshot of what's going on. It's good.
Is that something we'd want? Is that too much information to pop up on the website?
This might be, but for our purposes, I don't know. I mean,
This is the type of thing
This is us.
I'd like to see in a shared folder.
For
Yes.
selectmen and.
Yes, so we could bounce in and out, so as you're updating, you don't have to, I mean.
You don't have to worry about emailing it to us.
It simplifies your life.
We have to figure that one out.
Yeah, because, well, we should be able to figure that out, I would think. How often?
There is a selectmen's folder
Monthly.
that we can't
Good monthlies.
write to, we can only read from.
Right.
I mean, to read only is fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah, because it's
Probably just
easy for
email
us to
to us.
PDF it.
Yeah. The nice thing when you do have these shared things is like, you get it when you want it. It gets dropped in that bucket, but you don't have to worry about your emails getting bogged down, and I don't know,
You can't get it unless you come here.
That's right, that's the downside.
Isn't there like an external shared,
You can't
there's gotta be
access it from
shared,
home?
Not
not there.
The only thing
Town
I see at
network.
home is email.
Let me track too.
Yeah,
You should be able to get your shared, into that shared folder. I'll talk to them.
okay. But this is very good.
Okay, well, actually, before I go on to the last bullet there, I just want to put a plug. Scott, you mentioned solid waste, and I actually have a note. Last Friday, our backup truck went down, and shortly after the backup truck, or our recycling truck went down, shortly after the backup truck went out, it went down. So we were 2 trucks down. Some folks probably noticed the Pinard waste truck en route. We called Bob Algar in a jam. We were down a truck, and within an hour we had that Pinard truck in our hands. I'm not sure yet what arrangement we made for that, but he always said, because we helped train his drivers when he got into automation, that if we ever needed anything, just call him. And he was really, that was really, they even bumped that truck, 'cause it was their newest, cleanest truck, off a route it was on, and put one of their backups out to finish their work, so we could get one of the better trucks.
I got behind that on Orchard Street in Pinardville. I said, what is a Pinard truck doing picking up recyclables?
Yeah, so I just want to give a plug, because they really helped us out.
Carl, what was wrong with the other 2 vehicles? What were the issues?
One was a computer.
Yeah.
And one was because I talked to, what's his name there, he was there.
Mark?
Yeah, Mark was there, just following the Pinard truck for a while. He told me, and I forgot.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
When you say it's a module, I mean, was it a module to control the arm?
One of them.
Or was it an engine module for the running of the injection?
The regular truck, we had to send to Massachusetts, so it was, whatever it was not even something we could do here,
Right.
so it's gone to CN.
Was it in the pickup mechanism, I think is what you were saying, or was it in the actual vehicle?
No,
engine?
in the arm. I think it's all related to the arm. The trucks were drivable, it was the arm. So, anyway, so the last bullet, again, the concern about how busy staff is. We saw this coming, we being myself and staff, last year when we applied for ARA money. We have a very large, with the anaconda that swallowed the pig, and the pig is slowly making its way down the pipe. We're to the point now where I think we're looking at least at the big projects that are on our plate, and we're slowly getting our hands around it. What's not getting done is, we were almost there to being a year ahead on our road plans and all that stuff. the 2011 road plan projects are not almost planned. So when we finally get through the stuff we got on our plate, we're going to be faced with that, catching up on what we should have been doing right now in our regular workload. Megan did attach kind of her list of projects and priorities, kind of what she's looking at. Just to give the board an idea, even because, I know Selectman Pierce and I talked about outsourcing some projects. Even when you outsource a project to a consultant, the sewer commission has really stepped up on that Mass Road thing, but I bet you we still talk to that consultant 3 or 4 times a day. Problems come up in the field, questions come up, how do you want to put the road back together? I mean, there's just a multitude of issues that they don't live in town. The business owners, you can advertise it till you're blue in the face that Hoyle and Tanner is on that job. They know us. So when they have a problem, they're going to call us. It's just the way it works. So though outsourcing certainly would help, it's not going to relieve us of having to be involved in the project. And whenever we come across things like hazardous materials that we find in the soils, I mean, there's just no way around it. We're right in the middle of that, and you have to be. So, I guess the point being is it's never as easy as it seems. If you have a project, and the one I kind of threw on the list was, we've got that TE grant, that's going to be a very complicated project because you're dealing with DOT, you're dealing with potentially signalized crossings of a state highway. We're working outside our realm, so assuming DOT was okay, you got some bridges involved there, that's a project that I can see and Megan can see just sucking the life out of her available time, so if you're going to put money towards an outsourced project, grab one like that where you can hire a consultant that does bridges, that works with DOT, that would know those ins and outs, because we can get through it and we can figure it out, but it's going to take us a lot more time than it would take a transportation consultant that just does that for a living. But it's going to cost money. When you take a $300,000 job, you're talking $50,000, $60,000 right out of the gate to go hire somebody to just play ball with you. So it's where do you find that money to do that? So that's the challenge.
Yeah, I think one of our jobs is, I think you gave us a good education with what you provided. I think that was what we wanted. It helps us get a better grasp of all the things that you're doing. But I think we have to do equally as good a job of letting the community and let all these other committees and commissions know what's going on, because they act as the voice for Goffstown as well.
Right.
And I would urge you to share some of this information with the budget committee rep, and I'll share it with the entire budget committee. Let them know, it's easy to say, certain things, but there is a lot that is going on, and there's a lot of things that are totally outside of our control.
Right.
That are state and federal regulations that we have to comply with, and people sometimes lose track of that. There's a lot of mandates out there, and the stormwater, and the drainage issues, and there's a lot of things.
More to come.
Yeah, and there's more to come, right? So, but nice job, Carl, and yep.
Well, just a couple of questions on the rail trail slope failure project.
Yeah.
Have we received? Is there FEMA money in that? From the original?
There is. We received a little over $100,000 up front, which was like 50% share of the original estimate. When the bid is awarded, I think we receive I think when the work is complete, we receive the balance. But it's similar to any large FEMA project.
Can that money be used for engineering?
It is. That one we do have. We actually have 2 consultants. There's a design consultant and a permitting consultant that's working on that.
So would they do these plans, specs, quantities, RFP?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and they did, like I said, I just got the bid document in my inbox to review just today, so I'll crank through that in the next couple of days.
I think one of the things that we also, I'm sorry, I thought that you were done.
High school plan for traffic loop parking lot?
Yeah, we met with Stacy Buckley and the folks over there at the high school maintenance, and there are some minor tweaks that we could do in the back parking lots there. That we could maybe think about changing the traffic flow around the high school to help alleviate the burden on Wallace Road. And Stacy may or may not have a little money to work with while we've got the contract out there. And it's another simple thing. They're waiting for us to do just give them a rough idea of what's it gonna cost us to do this. And, you know, every day Megan comes in and says, okay, where does that fit?
Yeah, I think that's
Lakeshore Park, I got
talking
this, I
about
got
just
that.
enlarging that back exit and
Lane.
making it two-way.
Right, two-way, yeah.
Yeah, and moving,
That the
there's a
entrance.
parking lot, the entrance to the back lot, potentially moving it over. There's a clearing through the trees
Yeah.
that might facilitate traffic flow a little easier. And, you know, it's not,
I mentioned to Stacy that I'll be providing her feedback from an all-day conference I attended on federal grants called Safe Routes to School.
yeah,
And some of the projects described in that conference were on-site road construction and sidewalk construction.
yeah,
And it's a 100% financed
wow,
grant. There's no matching requirement.
wow,
I'll up my beat to get that feedback to Stacy.
yeah.
Steve?
One of the things I've been gathering, it seems to be in the engineering phases that we don't have enough resources. And I know, like, sometimes we just say sublet, can we just bring on one would it be a possibility to bring one on as an independent as a subcontractor for us for a stated period of time?
You know,
I mean, when we look at all the money that's out on these projects, I'm beginning, you know, I would expect the delays could be costing more than what it would take with the engineering piece, possibly.
possibly, but I am an engineer. I have a lot of friends that are consultants, and we need consultants. But I look at what we pay. We're paying a consultant for one job. I could have put an in-house engineer for 5 years, everything paid 100% for what we're spending that one consultant for the next few months. And it's like, why are we using our resources that way? Because I got a lot of work we can use those resources. So if we're gonna spend $50,000 or $60,000 for a project that's gonna take a consultant 2 or 3 months to do, why don't we spend $50,000 or $60,000 to get an engineer that can work for us all year long and get a whole bunch of stuff done?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I understand what you're saying. I'm looking for the space in between there. In other words, not going through a company or doing a sublet, but taking someone on a temporary basis. In other words, I'm not sure if there are engineers looking for employment, and they're saying, hey, would you like to take on a 3-month stint or a 4-month, and we're not sure where it leads to.
So you're talking about an actual, and the answer to your question is yes, there are.
Yeah, I mean, when that, I would expect that would be, as far as be more cost effective than the other.
I even know one right now. I never even thought of it, but I happen to know one right now.
In other words, and he would be utilized on these projects as we need and going from one piece to another. I know I'll throw out to the board, I don't know if that's something that we would think about, or if that's something that's warranted.
I don't know where we find the money.
Sometimes we find it within the projects, I guess, if you can.
Well, if you feel that you can squeeze it out of the project due to delays, because delays cost you money, but I don't know, I haven't done the math on, I wouldn't know how to do the math on that.
Well, let me, if I could throw out there, if we could look at something like that, is it worth me looking at the money? You know what I mean? Because I honestly, a friend, a guy that's worked for another town for years and years and years, retires effective Wednesday. And he had a job lined up with a consultant that fell through. So I saw him last week and he said, "Oh, I'm not sure what I'm going to do now, but I am retiring Wednesday." And it's not something I even thought about when we had that conversation, but.
Let me just throw up just some simple process, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. Just in traffic control, what we would pay for extra days or weeks, would that, would we?
I don't follow the projects that are being done now have been engineered.
All of them have been engineered?
If they haven't been, we haven't
But
started them.
the difference is that our engineering staff is also part of the oversight of this as well. They're the primary contact, so that even though the projects have been engineered, they're the ones who go back for the inspections, they're the ones who have to have the daily,
When an
weekly
issue
meetings.
comes up, they're the one
I
that-
understand.
Right, so therefore, they're being, what they would ordinarily do would be engineering, now they're acting as project managers or overseers, and they're not able to.
But are our projects that are in construction being delayed by engineering?
That was the understanding I was getting.
Well, at times.
Well,
You know,
most
for
set
instance, South
municipal-
Mass,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got projects that are on the 2010 plan that need not in-depth detailed bid plans, but
Oversight?
In progress, that
In
are
progress,
actually shovel in the ground?
yes.
In what way?
When things come up,
Yeah, you have to
unforeseen
you have to
things.
redo things.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
whole, I'll tell you, the whole drainage system in the roundabout had to be redesigned last week. We ran into water line
The
conflicts.
work stopped and
Work stopped, they moved somewhere else, and I was expecting to go to that meeting Thursday and have a big debate about downtime and an extra for equipment sitting idle. That's what I was expecting, that's why I was there with Alex. So I thought we were gonna have a little battle about downtime. And, you know, I haven't had the conversation with the engineering consultant yet as to,
I mean, I think, again, I hate to keep drawing parallels to like home improvements, but anybody who does any type of home improvement, yeah, you go into it, you're going to the Lowe's or Home Depot, you're buying your stuff, and then all of a sudden, ooh, I didn't know that there was a pipe there, or I didn't realize that this was rotted, or now, so now you gotta go back. And I think and then you have to go and redo your plan a little bit, because something came up, you have to buy another tool sometimes. That's just the way it goes, you know?
I'll be upfront
Yeah.
and honest.
Yeah.
I think the stars have aligned this year with all of these projects, and I don't doubt for a minute the amount of work. I would not be opposed to your suggestion if it was specifically a temporary position to address these projects that ends at the end of this year, and the money to pay for that
Comes
position
within-
comes from the road plan.
Yeah.
No additional expenditures.
I'm in favor of it too, 'cause I think it
Because
catches
there's a
it up.
There's a
Right.
cost savings to it. But
that's where
if
I'm
I could just,
going.
at the end of the year, though, I don't want to hear, well,
We need
the
another
person's
engineer.
been here for a long
Right.
time. We need another engineer. We'll just add him to the set.
Because,
That's what happens.
yeah. I'm in concurrence there. I think that I think Steve's idea has some merit to it. I think it solves our short-term problem, but there is no way that I could support making this a permanent position. This is a temp, and clearly a
It
temp.
wouldn't even be a temp.
Right.
Consultant.
Right. But I'm saying, it's a temporary situation. It's a finite period of time that this person whose services would be rendered. That's it. You know, this is not long-term. This is short-term, and with a finite end point.
Licensed to do plans in the state.
with a background of construction municipal engineering for the last 30 years.
Phil, what do you think?
Fine with me.
I mean, I don't know if he's interested. I'm throwing this out there. I don't.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, but
It's an option.
If
It's an
not
option,
him,
but
there's
I'm
someone
sure
else out there.
There's someone else out there, and in an economy such as this, I'm sure there's others out there that, not that we're looking into it as a subcontractor type fee, but, you know, here is an hourly temporary position or terminate, or a space of time.
With these specific jobs to be done.
Right. The scope of what we have on these sheets.
To keep the projects moving.
Right.
Because I think that'll speak to some of the timelines, things we're talking about. Hopefully that'll address some of the overrun costs. And part of that would be that whole piece of, if we can bring in most of these in a good time span, it's a positive thing for the community.
Yeah. Well, I will explore.
Any question?
None. All right, we're good?
I'm good.
All right, what we're gonna do now, folks, is, we're going to.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. We're gonna take, a little bit of a break, then we're gonna go into non-public session to address, just one matter. It's a hiring issue in the police department, and I'm hoping that we will be back let's shoot for, 8:55. We'll be back in a public session, 8:55. We are now live.
Thanks for the heads up.
Just want to give you a heads up.
Were we dead?
What? No, we returned from a break in a non-public discussion. regarding hiring. We are now at the town administrator's report, and we're only an hour and 15 minutes behind.
Well, I'll catch you up.
Well,
Your weekly meeting schedule is there, and it's quite hefty because it's for 2 weeks, because we don't meet next week for the holiday. Okay. I'm not going to go through them all. Consensus folder tonight, you have AP warrants, payroll adjustments effective July 1st, proclamations for Maddie and Carl, letter of thanks, Mike McKinnon for his service as Parks and Rec Commissioner, a raffle ticket permit for the Goffstown Police Association for their annual 50/50 raffle. Also, just added today, was an agreement regarding a temporary use restriction. This is for the Barnard land.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve the consensus folder. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Do we have any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The assessor recommends the report of timber cut for map 5, lots 56-3, 56-4, and map 9, lot 43-7.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you. This is regarding the Rail Trail Committee. This committee was developed in 2004 as an ad hoc committee. It's a very active group and continues to meet regularly. It's my opinion that this committee should be formalized with a composition of 11 members, including a representative from the Board of Selectmen, County Commission, UNH Cooperative Extension, Friends of Rail Trail, Police, Parks and Rec, DPW, Fire, Admin, and 2 community reps. I recommend that you appoint those currently filling the positions until March 2011. That would be David Pierce as the Selectman's rep, Carol Holden as the county rep, Chief Sullivan as the Police Department rep, Rick Wilhelmy as Parks and Rec rep, Lieutenant Bill Connor as the Fire Department rep, Megan Theriot as the DPW rep, Brian Rose as the admin rep, Dan Reedy as the UNH cooperative rep, and then these next two should be inverted. Ray Tabor is a community rep, and Lowell Von Ruden is the Friends of the Trail rep,
Blank.
right?
And then blank.
And then the last one, we need a community rep because that other one hasn't been able to show up.
All right.
Is there a reason why we have to do this now and then again in March? Why we can't just wait till March to make it into a formal committee?
Well, I thought it would be good to do this now through March. We lost, the changeover was with the planner, and Steve was very active with it before, and Brian will be, but,
And Rick was not here.
Right, Rick is.
right.
Right, but I mean, they're still part of the ad hoc committee, but in other words, instead of having to do this again in 6 months, 9 months, just keep it as an ad hoc committee until March.
We never did any kind of formal appointment papers, and I think it's been inconsistent of whether or not we do that with all ad hoc committees or not, but this one
This one seems
continues to go on.
long-standing.
Yeah.
One of our concerns is that when this committee was originally formed, there was a selectman's representative, and it was in the critical period when the trail parcels were being bought. Then, for several years without a selectman's representative, and today, though, this going forward, this town's going to be engaged with a $395,000 federal grant for trail construction, and it needs to have a formal selectman representative on that committee,
And that selectman is you.
if you would so choose.
All right, I need to have a motion to appoint these members as has been stated by Sue. I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Selectman Devanza. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. 5-0.
Thank you. Attorney John Quinn is handling the closing for us on the Barnard property, and he requests the following action be taken by the Board of Selectmen, authorizing the town administrator to act as town's agent at the closing on the Barnard land, which is scheduled for this Thursday, July 1st. The resolution that he would like signed, that's in your signature folder, is that Sue DeRusso is hereby appointed as agent of the board for the purpose of taking all actions appropriate, convenient, or necessary for the acquisition acceptance of the title being Parcel A shown on plan entitled Lot Line Adjustment Consolidation Plan. Address 404 Elm Street, assessors map 5, lot 24 and 39, Goffstown, New Hampshire, dated May 3rd, 2010, as revised through June 4th, 2010, prepared by Dahlberg Land Services, Inc., from Kilton G. Barnard and Joanna H. Barnard, co-trustees of the Kilton G. Joanna H. Barnard Trust, including but not limited to the power to accept the deed of conveyance on behalf of the board and the town of Goffstown to execute, deliver, and accept agreements, certifications, affidavits, or such other forms, disclosures, or documents, including the settlement statement she deems appropriate, convenient, or necessary to accomplish any of the foregoing, and to accept the funds or proceeds or other credits in furtherance of the foregoing.
When is this, where's this gonna be, at an office or here, or where's
Here.
it? It's gonna be
Town
here?
hall.
Okay. What time is that gonna be?
2 o'clock.
2.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to designate the town administrator as a town agent at the closing of the barn on land.
Is there a second?
Sue, do you actually want to have the motion be that they
To adopt the resolution
adopt
designated.
the
To adopt the
resolution,
resolution
which
as
empowers you to do
drafted.
all those things?
Right.
Designating town administrator as
Right.
the town agent. Yep.
So we're adopting the resolution,
Mhm.
which would allow you to do that. Okay, is there a second to that? Seconded by Selectman Fournier. Any discussion?
Just a quick update, everything has, the lot line adjustment, everything has gone according to
Yes.
what we have discussed, and nothing's changed?
Right.
Nope.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 5-0.
And later today, we received another one, and he said we need the certificate of action also for the land at the roundabout. That closing, that hasn't been scheduled yet.
So you don't need any motion on that.
Well, he wants these, you won't meet for 2 weeks, and the closing may be before 2 weeks.
So it's the
So he
same
would like-
thing?
It's gonna be the same resolution, there's 2 in your signature folder, one
No,
for.
they are in their signature folder because I signed them.
Oh, you signed them, okay. So it's the same
What do you mean
motion.
she signed it?
She just,
As the keeper of your records of the minutes.
Oh,
she certifies that you took this vote in
okay.
the resolution.
Oh, okay. So you need
Motion.
us
So-
to adopt a resolution.
Right, designated town administrator as town agent at the closing on the land around, abutting the roundabout.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Yes, seconded.
Any discussion?
Do we need to state the parcel numbers for the record?
I think the certificate of action does, and we'll incorporate it into that,
Thank you.
3 parcels.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Aye.
That's 4-1.
And that's all I have.
Next, we'll go to Selectmen's discussion.
Oh, one more thing, sorry.
Yeah.
I did get an update before coming into the meeting tonight that it's anticipated that the new website will go live next week, right after the 4th.
And the Champagne.
Wait, say that again?
Right
Say
after
that
the
again?
4th.
Right after the
Live,
4th?
yeah, live. I mean, all the training won't be done. We'll still have training ongoing to train staff on updating the pages, but the total migration of data will be done, and therefore it will go live.
Before July 4th?
Just after July 4th.
Okay, I will be going to get the permit from the fire department to light off the Roman candles and everything, so when it does go, it'll be 9
Enough.
o'clock on, okay. Okay, Selectmen's discussion, new business? Old business?
Yes,
Old business.
old business. On the 28th, excuse me. On the 5th of April, Eagle Scout, or prospective Eagle Scout, Mark Betts was here with his action to donate a bulletin board to the town's rail trail, and that bulletin board would have been located at Moose Club Park Road. He has run out of time to achieve Eagle status, and the project has been withdrawn. So I just want to bring that to your attention, that
Too bad.
that's been withdrawn, and I'll certainly
You'll
keep,
find another one.
I'll find another
I
perspective.
have a feeling you will. Anything else?
However, the other Eagle Scout project is well on track, and I personally know he's got $800 collected and moving well towards $1,200, and woodwork is being carved and assembled.
Any other old business? Yes, Nick?
Last year, we had a discussion regarding the rail trail design, and at that time, there was some discussion about the lighted signalized crossings. And then, when the permission was sought from this board for the TE grant, there were discussions at that time about whether or not we were going to signalize those crossings, and the response was, well, this is just an application for a grant. I've read 2 articles already in the newspaper proclaiming the grant that we received and the signalization that's going to occur at those 2 crossings, and I'm just wondering again when we're going to have a discussion, because I don't want to be backed into a corner where we have to do this for any number of reasons.
And I think, my recollection of this was that, and I know how I voted in support of the full amount because I didn't want to be in a position, I was not personally in favor of all these signalized intersections, but I did not want to be in a position whereby state DOT came back and said, you must, and then all of a sudden we were short money. So I think we need to have a discussion as to whether or not we want to proceed with these signalized intersections. Are they a must? Are they not a must? Because it seems to me that if we can do the lower cost alternative, that might be another route to go.
When this board has not reviewed the acceptance of the grant, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, but I believe there has to be 2 public hearings
Yes.
for that? So will be...
One public hearing.
One public hearing, so there'll be opportunities for comment before we make a decision on the acceptance of the grant, and there could be comment on the extent of the design that the community wants and the board wants.
At what point does DOT review the plan?
After they're drawn, and as Carl mentioned, it's an opportunity, it's an engineering issue to draw the final plans and then submit them to the state highway
And who pays for
transportation.
that?
And then, proceed, look at their approval for where a crosswalk could be located and what type of signalizations.
Is our
feasible.
engineering part of that grant? So
Yes.
Okay.
There's money in the estimate to do engineering.
Okay.
And specifically, when the amounts were first proposed, a rough draft of that was sent to the Department of Transportation, and they phoned back and said, Carl, you need more money in there, and he did. The cost of the application, the amount of money we asked for went up because of that.
But I may have misunderstood you. I thought there was something when Sue had asked if DOT had approved the plan.
No. They've approved the concept for the grant. They have not approved the actual design, because there hasn't been a design.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is, so if we expend the money and the time to come up with a design that they don't approve, do we get reimbursed for the expense of that design?
I'm not qualified to answer that.
Okay, I'll rephrase the question. If this board has a preference of not incurring the cost, is a more substantial cost to proceed with the signalized pedestrian crossings, and prefers to come up with a more low-tech approach, and it goes before the state DOT, there are 2 things that could possibly happen. Well, 3. They can totally outright say, sorry, you're done, we don't want anything to do with you. 2, they can come back and say, fine, we're good with this is an approach that works. Or 3, they can come back and say, no, you're putting signalized intersections in. And to which this board then has to come back and say, yeah, we're going to proceed with them, or no, we're not going to accept the grant.
Well, Selectman Campusano brings up a good point, is that we need to make initial overtures to the state transportation department to make sure that they're leaning in the right direction before we do a lot of spending money on final plans for our staff's engineer time to do complex plans on crosswalks.
I think I certainly can't speak for the community on this, I can speak for myself, but it's great to have this grant. and I'd love to see this whole thing get completed, but by the same token, it seems crazy that tax dollars, albeit federal tax dollars, are being spent on signalizing pedestrian crossings on a rail trail, but yet we can't get some of our dangerous intersections paid for by federal grant. I just have a problem with that, but.
Different.
And I'll take a different line. We have heard engineering reasons, traffic reasons why a signalized intersection at Wallace and Mass Road would not work.
Right. It would not work, but it's not as safe as, say, the roundabout. We've heard that.
Yet, we're going to put up a potential uncontrolled signal, pedestrian, where any child or anybody can go over and push a button and turn a red light less than 0.2 of a mile from Norman and Mass Road intersection, and less than a mile from the Mass Road and Wallace intersection. And I just don't think that it's going to work, and I don't.
So should
Unless it's mandated, I don't know why we can't just have a pedestrian crossing. I mean, bicycles have crossed roads for years. There's good sight distances there. I think money can be better spent elsewhere than the kind of money they're proposing for a signalized crosswalk.
It's kind of like taking the money, I believe, what was the quote on this thing, $150,000 for the three of them?
90-something for...
33,000 each or
Each one,
something.
okay, I'm sorry. So let's just say it's 100,000 for the three. And you say to yourself, there's got to be a better approach to this thing. And is to all three, is there one that maybe needs it, the other two don't? It just seems like, I don't know. Yes? Phil?
Well, when we first discussed this, I guess the reason why I asked the question about that DOT approving this, because it seems oxymoronical to me that we get a CMAQ grant that we do Pinardville with the purpose of the CMAQ grant is so that we don't have, to keep traffic flowing. You don't want to have traffic lights because they cause pollution, they cause congestion. We've incorporated, this is what we've strived to do all these years, because this is where the concept is meant. Now we get to a rail trail that's crossing a major road that, I can't give you the traffic counts because I don't know the numbers, but Nick's point, okay, this, of what we have here, now we have every person that's going to use this rail trail is going to cross this point is probably going to push that button. What are you doing to the traffic flow on Mast Road at this point? What I can't comprehend is them approving this in the first place. I assumed that they would be looking at this, DOT would look at this, and they would probably say, we don't want a light on there. Why can't we get a pedestrian? Why can't we get a grant to put a bridge, a footbridge over for bicycles and for pedestrians? It's a non-motorized anyway. Now you're not, to me, that's more in line with all the philosophy and all the thinking that we've been doing all along. Keeping traffic flowing, not stopping it, no lights, less pollution.
If I could add, I would think as a motorist who goes through there continuously and sees a yellow flashing light, they may or may not expect, they may not even notice that it turns to red. But yet you may have a pedestrian on a bicycle or walking that pushes that button and then just goes, assuming that everybody's going to stop, versus having it marked, having the crosswalk well marked, and people look both ways. Like I said, there's good sight distances there, and they don't cross until there's no traffic.
Yeah. I just think that there are other approaches, such as a flashing light that says, pedestrian crossing ahead and it's well marked, that is not going to make people stop. It's just making them aware. Like, a lot of times you get that flashing light as you're approaching a school zone, or I would think, to me, that would be more, but I think this whole notion of stopping is totally contradictory with everything that we've heard with these roundabouts. Just doesn't make sense.
I'm even going further back
Two
to the
points.
CMAC.
2 points here. The pedestrian activated stoplight could have a cycle time where it would not go okay for the pedestrian for, 3 or 4 minutes between cycles. That could be programmed. And I want to address Selectmen issue on carrying the rail trail over a highway on a bridge. The development plan did look at those options, and they were ruled out as being much more expensive than crosswalk signalized. And that's because in order to provide an ADA compliant grade to reach that bridge, which is 14 feet above the road, the grade has to extend back several hundreds of feet, which would require land taking for the embankments, as well as all the construction therein. So bridges were ruled out.
Tunnels. No more.
Before we get into engineering, and could a simple letter to the DOT requesting some information, A, does a rail trail crossing over 114 require signalized crossing? 2, would they even allow a signalized crossing before we get into
Any engineering? Yeah.
the engineering costs?
I would like to bring that to DPW and have them quickly research that.
Couldn't DOT just provide us with that information?
Well, you mentioned
Letter.
having a letter sent for an official decision. I would like to have that done. It's a good suggestion. And I'll bring that to DPW board, so wants to move out on it. I think it's a good idea.
I have a question on this. You're talking about the approach for ADA compliance. That triggers a couple of things in my mind. So if this approach if this crossing has to be ADA compliant, okay, I guess some of those engineering requests as far as the timing, because I guess the question that I would have is to be ADA, to be able to push a button and have an intersection that's ADA compliant, there's got to be a time, a minimum time that light is going to be red to the traffic. Okay.
Right, so that person can cross the street.
Right. Now, as far as the approaches, what they've done in New York on some of these, for this, instead of having the approach that you're talking about like this, when you come up, they have
Switchbacks.
right,
Yeah.
till you get up to the right height. Why couldn't you do that?
Cost.
I understand cost, but to me, if you take the cost of everything that's been in this rail trail, for the crossing here of Mast Road, for a intersection, a signal light intersection at this crossroad that's anticipated to be used by a lot of people. Now, are we going to be having that red light cycle every 5 minutes on Mast Road, 24/7? If you're going to do that, then no matter what the cost, put the bridge in.
I would disagree with your extrapolation of that intense using of the trail, but
we're trying to promote the use of the trail.
And with safety for the trail user. If you've been out there at rush hour wanting to cross in 2 locations.
Okay, so you just brought up the point. You want to cross Mast Road at that rush hour. So who's the one that's you have to be careful of? The pedestrian crossing has to be. We're concerned about the pedestrian crossing, aren't we? So we're going to stop the traffic on Mast Road during rush hour to let the pedestrian go. He goes through, and right behind him is another pedestrian comes and presses the button again for the light again.
Lag time. that, what's different than
Regular
you see
crosswalk.
regular crosswalk that you see in
Pedestrians wait for
Manchester?
traffic.
No, I know, I understand that, but I'll be quite honest, everyone knows I'm not in favor of the light, but I'm sure it's not gonna be 24/7, every 4 minutes someone's pushing a light bulb, and I'm sure when people are going, we're gonna keep Mass Road open, I mean, we're getting a little bit into the abyss or whatever. I
Next
think
thing
the
you
question
want-
goes
next
back,
thing-
I think it goes back to Nick, can we get,
Send a
if we
letter.
go with the grant, get the letter, is the traffic light a mandatory or not before we go much more
Right.
conversation?
Is it a deal breaker? You
Yes.
know? I mean,
We may find Department of Transportation agrees with a signalized stoplight, and then that would be something for us to consider.
To discuss.
And then we can downgrade it from there. Or go with it.
I just want to be clear, the question to ask is it required
Right.
by DOT?
I think the answer to that, we already know, it's not required. Because a bridge was an option, a tunnel was an option, a light was an option.
Well, I think that was a question Chairman Gross
Do you want a
had.
list of your options
I think,
across the state road?
Is it
they would
mandated
approve?
that we have a signal there to begin with?
in other
Oh,
words,
I don't think it's
No,
mandated.
it wasn't. It was part of the engineering plan to do that.
if I could, so, on the grant, would it be possible to build the bridges, well, not the bridge you're talking about, the bridge over Henry Bridge Road, et cetera, which is the big part we were talking about, the old Henry Bridge Road, okay? And do crosswalks, if, I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, would that be possible with this grant, or are we forced to put the lights in?
The grant is essentially providing safe passage across 3 highways and a bridge over a 23-foot
Okay.
gully. So that's the concept.
Okay, that's the concept.
Safe crossing.
So if we put a bridge over the old Henry Bridge Road and we painted in 3 crosswalks, would that meet the criteria?
That would have a degree of safety.
So that could be a possibility.
Yes.
I think that's what you were trying to go to.
And then you could have more safety for the pedestrian with other designs.
But that would meet the minimum criteria, and everything after that is an
Right, I
enhancement.
mean, we could give everybody a police escort through these things too, but there's a cost. So, I mean, and that would be the maximum. I mean, we could have patrolmen on we could have segways because it's non-motorized. But, I mean, I think we're trying to be realistic here. You know, everyone, is seeing a tough economy, and it's great that we got this grant, but there's gotta be a less expensive alternative than putting in lights, which we've all been told are bad. That slow traffic down.
I want to, there's difference between traffic control lights for an intersection and one that's occasionally activated for a pedestrian.
I think we need to find out what's acceptable to DOT
And
for options at these crosswalks.
I'd like to first go with the letter that Selectman Campusano recommended, and then we'll discuss it from there. And we're not going to be discussing the acceptance of this grant for several months. So it's time to gather information.
Do we wanna have a public hearing now on it?
We need the official administrative instructions dealing with the grant
All right.
before we have those discussions.
I think you're hearing me, go ahead.
We need to have those discussions sooner rather than later. They actually should have occurred before we even applied for the grant. But I think there was a time constraint at the time, we were told, so I think this stuff needs to get ironed out before we get any further into the acceptance.
And on the letter, just for me, I understand the bridge over Old Henry Bridge Road, but as far as the crossings, from Henry Bridge Road and the 2 over Mass Road, in other words, there must be a minimum criteria. Can we find, and if that's an option or not? Is it gonna go crosswalk and crosswalk with flashing signs, or crosswalks and
Okay,
stoplight?
here's a classic example. The crossing at Henry Bridge itself. Is it earth-shattering? Is there a way that people can cross at the light that's already at Henry Bridge? I mean, to me, I don't.
Well, you may have to add to that system, because the light is just in the middle of the road.
I think that was discussed because of the gas station. It was complicating.
You'd be bringing the trail user 200 yards off the trail to go up to the light and 200 yards back. And Or
So you're
when,
incon-
and when they see the other trail 20 yards across the road, which one are you gonna take?
Okay, so going back to.
We'd be building a trail no one's gonna use.
Going back to what he's saying is that, you wouldn't bring it up there, but would it be possible to put a crosswalk there like we have in every other part of the town? And would that meet the criteria?
That would provide a degree of safety. How would the?
Right, how can DOT, currently, we have a crosswalk right in front of, of a mast where Wallace is first, for student use. How could that be anything different than?
It's a town road at that point, right?
I understand,
You're talking
but,
about crossing a state road in two places, so
That's what I'm saying, you need to know if it meets the
they
criteria.
need to, we need to meet their criteria. and
Henry
state
Bridgeway, I
road.
don't think we have to worry about it, but.
Right, 'cause that's town
Henry
road.
Bridgeway could do the
but then
crosswalk, yeah,
again,
too, I'm not sure what.
right, and I understand your point, but, we're asking trail users to go 200 yards out of their way. Okay, that's what you're saying, so big deal. But we're gonna ask motorists, which are tens of thousands, to stop every once in a while, who ever noticed, for 3 minutes while somebody has to cycle across. It's gonna inconvenience somebody. I personally would rather see the trail user inconvenienced and make them do that little jut around than have a pedestrian, than have a motorist, but that's on a major road.
And I agree, I mean, it's not gonna be 24/7, but if you look, one of the rail crossings is right at the Villa Ball Fields.
Right.
And if you go through that area now, this time of the year, at around 5 o'clock, there are baseball games, and there are people parked on both sides of Mast Road. So that light will be utilized frequently during the peak rush hour by a lot of people.
It's gonna be a difficult.
Yeah, what degree of safety do you wanna provide for the pedestrian? And
At what cost? And at a cost, so. All right, we beat this one to death. Next is, committee reports, EDC. I think we pretty much got a good gist of that, Steve.
Can I have 30 seconds with it, though?
Sure. I'm sorry, I just thought that we kinda covered most of everything.
No, the only other piece I wanted to bring up regarding EDC, one of the things that was spoken about, and was, obviously you saw the website, that's great, we talked about RSA 79E, that's good. But as you come down from, if you're on 114, as you pass St. A's and you're coming down to the Danish Park intersection, what they were talking about, not exactly there, but a little further back, like you might, when you drive into Peterborough, there's always a sign saying, "Welcome to Peterborough," etc. And part of what they were talking about within EDC was the idea, when you get to that intersection, there's a lot of sign pollution, so they were talking about possibly having a sign further away from that intersection, but also letting you know, left, you're going to Goffstown Village, right, Pinardville Business District, or something like that, but a sign, and they weren't talking in regards to a sign that would be, shall we say, like the normal highway sign, but something you're coming into Goffstown. They were talking about that, and I just wanted to throw that idea out here. I'm sure that's something that would get involved with the local businesses and things of that nature, but I don't know if that's something we would support or not.
I've been mentioning this for 3 years, so
I support it.
I believe that this is part of what, the window dressing of your community, and I talked about the possibility of maybe having service organizations or business sponsor it. Usually, a lot of times it's a service organization will put it in, like the Rotary or the Lions Club or the Oddfellows or Optimists, where they actually donate the sign, and then below that is their symbol, and say, we meet at this restaurant on this time, and it's usually their plantings around it, and it's a beautification, it's a nice, thing. And you do it at your major entry points into your community. We do have some.
The ones that are.
We have now, so you want a bigger or more up-to-date, nicer sign?
You're talking about more of like a 4-foot by 8-foot nice sign.
Well, let's ask the
And-
organizations that donated those if they would like to update.
And for example, on 114 going to Ware, within the last month, there's been a nice-looking sign put up by the town, welcome to Ware.
And they're trying to distinguish a little bit that this way to Pinardville, this way to the village, because there are differences of where you're going and what's going on. Just something that was brought up. If it's something you want to support, I can go back to the EDC and say, is this something we support, we would look at business to support this.
I'm in favor of it. I have been for the last 3 years. I think it's a nice, and I think the area that you just mentioned is one area. I think the back road is another area.
Well, let me just say one thing. you're gonna do anything with this, what I would suggest is the first thing that they do is contact the Rotary Club and go and have a discussion, because the current ones that are in there have been paid for and they're maintained by the Rotary Club.
Is there one coming in from 114?
I think they put 7 up in town.
No, is there one?
They're metal. These are metal signs, and albeit they're better than.
They say, welcome to Goffstown.
Right, they're better than nothing. But I think what we're talking about, it's not to insult the road, right? I hope I didn't.
You're not insulting me.
And I hope I did not. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you do go to communities in, in Peterborough, Meredith, I can rattle off plenty of them. Dover, you go in and they have these nice.
It's a gateway.
It's a gateway sign, right? And I think there's opportunities for us to try to, here you have economic development. They're trying to market the community, and there are people who.
And that was
a way to do it.
That was one of the points, is because a lot of people come down at 114, take a left, and I realize you're gonna say, well, most people must know what's related in Pineapple, but it's just another reminder of what's there.
The other thing that I again, and it stares you right in the face as I drive home that way every day, but when I go around the Grassmere Circle, bless you, I am just like, it's so beautiful. I think it's Rial Falou, I think, who does that, or right? It's gorgeous. I mean, the plantings are phenomenal. The colors, all spring, summer.
Just imagine a statue in the middle.
Right. I'm just saying, it's a beautiful. I'm just saying, it's a beautiful. It's a very nice. That area of town looks so much nicer than when I first moved to town in terms of aesthetics. And I think that this new roundabout with similar plantings, et cetera, and I think the signs. I think these are the little things. I know it's window dressing, and it'll cost a nominal amount of money, but they go a long way. To trying to attract, business and also to make the community feel good about itself. So I think it's something that we should approach EDC and others about, see if they would like to sponsor them.
Which was one of the things, when you noticed the EDC, when you're looking at the website, and you saw that there were some photos up, there was 2 children sitting on a dock, you saw a sailboat. In other words, you're trying to promote a community type feeling, and I think it's small, it's subtle, but I think it's something that it repeats itself continuously, and it's bang for your dollar. All right. So,
and we intend to change those each season?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just one of those pieces that are out there. I'll go back. Robbie Grady was, she was one who actually brought that idea forward. So I'll go back to EDC, and the next meeting we can say let's proceed forward and see what the plan would look like. Yes. The diagram. Okay.
She's involved with Rotary, so she'd be great to approach them.
Yeah. So.
I mean, she may not be aware that the Rotary did those.
Okay, well, we'll make sure everyone understands when we touch base.
All right, Conservation Commission.
Conservation Commission met last week. We had an update on the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission Piscataquag River Matrix. Both Jason Sachs and David Neiman updated the commission. On the plan, they're very satisfied with the goals and objectives of the plan, but they were concerned that a lot of the maps and illustrations and data for Goffstown was missing. So they are sending a memo to the commission outlining their concerns, and they will be meeting on June 24th. June 24th, they met on June 24th to bring the comments to the commission. The commission had a discussion with Brian Fournier regarding Fournier Revocable Trust, which is a site plan before the planning board. They discussed some of the issues regarding drainage and alleged wetland fills. The commission voted to recommend that the proposed detention basins be properly maintained into the future, and that all other concerns had been addressed to their satisfaction, and they moved it on to the planning board, which I think Phil will have a report, because you met the night following regarding that. We also had a discussion with Cordis and Blackbriar Woods developers, Eric Mitchell, for a proposed 19-lot open space subdivision, and there's a potential that site plan is going to be changed. So the commission voted to provide comments after the submittal of the revised plans on that project. Excuse me, we reviewed some timber cut permits and correspondence review. One of the areas of concern the Conservation Commission was the memo that the Board of Selectmen had posted regarding the all boards meeting and the disputing the fact that open space costs, or developing open space costs the the town and disputing the assessor's memo regarding that. And then finally, we had an update from the code enforcement officer on the Tibbetts Hill. There's a lot up on Tibbetts Hill Road that has been accumulating trailers and drums over the years, and we saw before and after pictures of progress being made on the removal of those items up there. And the commission had some questions and concerns of potential groundwater contamination that may need to be looked into on that site. That was it.
Question?
Yes.
On the Fornia one, I'm reading here, it said that they voted to recommend the proposed detention basins be properly maintained and a maintenance plan be put in place, and then it says all other concerns have been addressed. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. We
All
had
other concerns have been addressed, okay.
It was actually, there were two parts to this. There were, we reviewed the letter from DES, and the formal vote was that exactly how it's stated here. And then later on in the meeting, we had some public comment from an abutter who informed the commission that they were challenging the DES letter. And at that time, the owner had already left, and the chairman basically stated that they could not reopen that portion of the meeting because the owner had left and that their vote was going to stand as far as all concerns, as far as they had in front of them were concerned.
The reason why I'm asking is just a clarification on that, because my recollection was that it was, I'll have to double check because I'll jump ahead if you don't mind. Planning board, they denied the request of Fornia for the extension, and they had the public hearing that night.
Right.
And it was, my recollection is that it was stated by the conservation chair that the Conservation Commission has serious concerns about the site. And reading this, I don't see how that is possible. The issue came up about the letter from the DAS that says that there is no definitive, I'm just paraphrasing, not quoting what the letter says, but they have no definitive, not evidence, but no nothing definitive that there's been filling.
Correct.
And at this point in time, they're not going to pursue it. Then my understanding was because the applicant was, one of the abutters was there and had a zone soil scientist who requested that peer review of the DES by that. So that's apparently, I mean, I question, I mean, if the DES are they the ultimate authority? And we'll see what happens.
You're correct. There was a letter from DES basically stating there was no evidence of historical filling of any wetlands. They determined that the runoff on the opposite side of the property was sheet flow over the surface of the property from the abutting property. And I believe that they determined that the amount of disturbance
was less than the 100,000, and he did not need any permits at the time, so he was not in violation of anything.
Correct. So the formal vote of the Conservation Commission was that there were no concerns, all concerns were addressed,
right,
and that they were requesting that any treatment swales be put into
the detention ponds, right?
Detention ponds be put, a maintenance plan be put in.
Right.
The abutter arrived, an abutter arrived later on in the meeting, raised the concern about the DES letter and the fact that they were going to appeal that letter.
Right.
But at that point, the chairman stated that they weren't going to reopen the vote because the owner of the property had left. They had closed that portion of the meeting, and that their recommendation stood as it was voted on.
Good. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, you're still on.
Okay. So I'm on that portion of the planning board. As I stated, they voted to deny the request, and they had the hearing, and it's been continued to
July 22.
yeah, I was gonna say 22nd of July. One of the other issues that we discussed was the gravel, we have the graveling operation for the property behind the villa. And apparently they're going to, what happened was, they have to, they have to go to the ZBA for two things. They need a variance on the graveling or excavation on the residential piece of property because it's not allowed, it's not a permitted use. And also they need a special exception for the excavation operation in the ag zone. There was a thought that there was a conflict in the zoning ordinance because it talked about the planning board managing the operation. And then they talked about it being permitted in the ag zone with the special exception and not permitted in the residential. And it was realized that that was two different issues, because the management is basically your daily your operation of it, and the zoning ordinance is correct on which areas it's allowed and what you need in order to get it. So they need to go to the ZBA for those. The applicant was aware of it. Since it was a notice public hearing, we did have a preliminary public hearing, and it was stated what their plan is to use the old gravel road that's in there. It was presented by Matt Peterson, and apparently there's an agreement between the owner and John Neville, who apparently will be doing the excavation on the property. It was brought out that the amount of trucks that we talked about was probably correct, because at one point they stated about 40 trucks. Then it depends on what your operation is. They're planning to use the Mast Road intersection coming out by the villa, by the ball field. So some of that time there were several abutters that were there. There were references made in the presentation that the owner was planning to put this, have this back on the ballot. There were references made to talking to town officials. During the public hearing, I asked the question about this, that you say that you've been in contact with public officials. For the record, I wanted to make it clear to everybody that the owner is planning to put this on as a petition article, that he has the right to do that. And then I asked that you say town officials. Who are the town officials? I said, because there's been no discussion with the Board of Selectmen. There may be discussion with the school board that I'm not aware of, because we have nothing to do with the school board. So who is it, the town officials? And I was told conservation commissioners.
Conservation?
That's what I was told at the public hearing, that they've been in contact with conservation commissioners. And I stated conservation commissioners have no authority to purchase land or have those discussions to purchase land. And I kind of left it at that. I just wanted the board to be aware of the questions that I asked, the statements that I made, and I guess the concern that I have is that you have abutters that are there that have concerns about 40 trucks a day going past their houses, their homes, their side yards, their backyards. With references of, we've been in contact, we've had discussions with town officials. I just have a concern that there's an implication there that this has the blessing of town. And I just had to say that just to let that out, and I just let the board be aware. If I said misspoke, then I need to correct that. And don't believe I did, but I just wanted the board to be aware.
Well, one of the things we don't know is we don't know who has had discussions, who may be a town official with
And
this
it was-
individual.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No.
but what was presented was that the plan is to put it on the ballot this year, and if it fails, to keep putting it back on.
As I explained to you, I mean, I did speak to the landowner, I think it was last year, at the same time when we were working on the Barnard property, and stated that the Barnard property was first in the pipeline, and that depending upon what happened in March, the board would, we always would reconsider things, but we're not talking right now. And the board has had no conversations with the landowner since that time. And I think it seemed to be, from our conversations last week, that this is not the time to be buying land. We have other priorities that are more pressing. The Barnard property satisfied our need for land, and that's why we pursued it. And this year, it's just not availing itself. We talked about that, but should now we be sending a memo to the other committees in town, whether all of them? I'm just saying, the board does not believe it's in the best interest right now to pursue any land purchases. We did purchase a piece of property last year that is going to fulfill our needs. If there is something that you feel is pressing, please, contact the board immediately for a discussion, but at least let them know that we're not going to endorse it, and send it to the school board too. And if it's something in which they think is I think you have to keep should you make absolutes in life? Probably not, but by the same token, I think we leave the door open by saying it's our desire not to pursue any land purchases. However, if there is something pressing that you would like to have a discussion on, please contact us. Now, conservation is one of those groups that does have funds, and it would, and if they were somehow able to structure something, whether it be a purchase with a sizable donation, maybe there's tax reasons why someone would do something like that. I think that's something that we probably would have to entertain, or whether, let's say, it was an easement or one of those things. But so I'm not 100% shutting the door there, but I just don't know where the money is coming from. I think that's what we're concerned, is where are we going to get the money to pay for it? Am I off base in it's in our minutes, but is that good enough? Should we send a memo saying that we're not inclined to do it, but if there's something that you think is pressing, please contact us so we can have a
I
discussion?
thought that was the message that came across with the all boards meeting.
I do too, but then again, should we make it official? It's in our minutes, it's in the all boards meeting. I just don't think it hurts to send a memo off to all of the chairs, and this way there is no doubt. It's in writing. There's no doubt. It's in our minutes. It's in writing. It seems to me that if that's still a case where someone is now saying, hey, I've been talking to town officials, and maybe they are, and maybe, whether it be conservation or anybody, typically, like conservation and open space, those folks have had some discussions, and more often than not, they've come to us to clue us in, hey, we're having these discussions. But I wouldn't want to give anybody any wrong impressions, whether it be a developer, landowner, or anybody on another board.
Well, let me ask you this question, would it be worth something to look in the minutes, just review conservation, I'm not conservation, Parks and Rec Commission minutes, to see if there has been discussion?
You before said you felt that the official was from conservation.
No,
Now you're saying
did
Parks
I
and
say
Rec.
conservation?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I'm
That's why I
sorry.
said
I'm sorry. No, Parks and Rec Commission.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Parks
You're
and
on
Rec.
that commission. Has there been any discussions about it?
Not at all. In fact, the only discussion about land, obviously, was just the bar in Kilton,
Right.
what are the long-range plans, as they were talking long-range regarding Parks and Rec, but there was never the conversation that someone was in negotiations with people for other parcels. I don't know where this is coming from.
Parks and Rec Commission would consult with the Board of
Yeah,
Selectmen.
I don't know.
Well, you know what? Why bother
You're chasing rumor.
Right. Why chase a rumor? That's not good policy. Why don't we just be proactive and just say that, send a note to all of them, the board has had discussions. We're not inclined to entertain land purchases for the March 2011 warrant. However, should something avail itself which you deem as very vital to the mission of your commission, please have an immediate conversation with the board so that we're all on the same page. That's it. Because maybe there is something out there that is and I look at conservation in particular, they have monies in the conservation fund that they could spend, that has no tax impact, and maybe it's a good deal.
And
Maybe.
it leaves you in a
And
position
it leaves you in
also
a position that you could do.
But also it leaves you in a position that there were no surprises if something comes at a later date. Or what
Right,
the
well, here's a
intent-
classic example. Last year, when we went through this whole thing with that other easement, there was a discussion about if you use some of your own funds first, then, right? I think you mentioned that, and that got nowhere.
Well, and I think that's part of the misconception, because there was a conversation the other night at Conservation about that, something to the effect about how the selectmen thought that our project was more important than their project, so we supported that versus theirs, and I think it's been lost in the translation that the Board of Selectmen would have, and I'm speaking for the board now, most likely would have supported that if the wording had just been structured they must have had an amount in their mind that they would have paid maximum for that property. And if it was using, whatever, if they had put their money first and then utilized tax dollars to fill in whatever
I think it
else
would have been a
was
lot different
needed,
outcome.
I think there would have been a lot different outcome. But basically it was, well, we have this money we're collecting to buy land, but we don't want to use it all now because we want to buy more land and let the taxpayer pay for this one. And it had its merits. It's good open space. It's beautiful farmland. It's one of our limited resources. But I think had it been structured differently, we probably would be signing the paperwork.
And I think by sending this memo to all the ones, it makes it crystal clear, and especially for conservation, to say, we're not shutting the door here, but there would be a pretty high expectation that you're going to be using your funds first if there's a good deal that comes on the horizon. Because, I think they have something like 200,000 plus in that fund. More than that?
There's two funds.
There's two funds,
Right.
yes.
Right.
It's over 300.
Okay.
New point.
Yes, sir.
Phil, was, in your discussion of, you mentioned 40 trucks a day leaving this excavation site. Did that further any discussion about what's the destination of these trucks and regional impact?
Okay, I was gonna get to that. There was also a letter from the town of Bedford that was received regarding that, because they do have a concern about that. It was represented that trucks were gonna be coming out onto Norman Road, and that they'd be utilizing Mast Road.
And they would just stop on Mass Road, they wouldn't go to any other town? They would just dump their load in Bernardville and go home, or?
Well,
I'm sorry. No, when you talk about regional, for crying out loud, we get regional impacts on cell towers in Litchfield.
Well,
Unless all of the fill is gonna remain in Goffstown, then there is a regional impact.
well, all I can tell you is that the planning board had voted the previous time that they found no regional impact, and they left it at this point. At this point.
Right.
Now, what
And
comes...
they're their own independently elected board. We have to appreciate that and understand it, and that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah, we're good. I'm good.
all right.
But I just wanna go back now to this whole thing about a memo. Are we sending a memo, or aren't we sending a memo? I believe we should, but we act as a board. If you don't wanna do it, you wanna let the minutes of this meeting and everything else we've talked about stand on its own, that's fine. I'd rather over-communicate this one than under-communicate it.
I'll make a motion to send a memo.
Is there a
second.
Second?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We'll draft it for your next
Alright.
meeting in 2 weeks.
Anything else?
Okay, no, I'll go
More
on to
planning
the...
board stuff?
Yeah, no, those two, and the only other thing that we had a completeness review, conditional use permit for a sign change over at mobile station.
Which sign?
Quiznos.
Oh, the one with the 50 signs on the corner?
Well,
That one?
it's gonna have...
It's gonna have 51 now.
Oh, no, 51.
He's winding up now,
What? Oh, because I would have thought that maybe before we approved this one, we would have held him to this gentleman to the standard of, the signs that he should have. But it's okay. We move on.
I'm done.
All right.
Question before we,
What?
just a question
Yeah.
before. I don't want, before we get too far away from this subject. last year, or this year at town meeting, there was some questions that arose regarding the passage of a warrant article requiring us to purchase a piece of land when we had not entered into any negotiations or had a purchase and sales agreement. Did we ever get anything
Yes.
from the attorney regarding that?
Right, and his answer was his standard response to similar questions throughout the years. Town meeting can pass something that doesn't require the Board of Selectmen to take any action.
Yes.
You learned that one at your class, right?
Well, maybe.
Yes, it was.
Maybe it may be worth
Oh, so-
getting ahead of the curve on that.
This way, that might not come then.
Correct, to
Yeah.
communicate that there are a whole host of reasons why we're behind the 8 ball trying to negotiate with a landowner when the outcome has already been determined.
Right.
You know, if someone thinks we have to buy a piece of land, they're negotiating from a position of strength versus equality, and just think maybe that's something that we should communicate to.
To the landowner,
Yeah.
who's putting this who might be putting this, or the person, the petitioner. Because the petitioner may be under the false premise that the town must buy the property when we do not have to buy the property. It's a good point.
You want to include that in this letter too, though?
As a separate issue to the landowner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
It
You have something else?
A quickie, just a quickie. On that trolley car, and they're taking the parts out of it. Do we have a date that they're done with this thing?
You and your dates, it's on your calendar?
Is it on my calendar? No, I'm just joking.
I did follow up with Dave Roberge about that,
Yeah.
and they're pretty much done what they can do alone, but they said when we get to the demolition,
Does he want it for
they'd
Friday?
like to come and pick what's underneath, but they can't get under there now.
You know how they do that? They come in with an excavator and just
Yeah,
crush it and put it into a dumpster. It's not.
Yeah, I offered they could take the whole thing away if they
That
wanted to
would
get
be
it to
good.
it at their site.
We could, you know what? Could
They
we?
weren't interested.
Oh, okay.
Of course not, that would be
No, but I mean,
Should've
no.
told them the only way they can get the parts is you gotta take it away.
That's
No,
what
no.
I told them, I said,
But no, to say, because this is gonna be one of these deals where a 35-yard dumpster goes there and someone comes in with an excavator and they just crush it and put it in. What if we said, hey, they can take care of that, it's probably like $2,500 to put that thing in a dumpster and take it away. What if we said, this way they could take their time, taking other pieces out, would they be open to that?
I doubt it, not for $2,500.
Yeah, it has,
They have limited
there has to
funds.
be
Okay, I didn't know,
a
I'm just throwing it
deadline
out
on
there.
this, and
All right.
yeah, no, they're
We could
through
call it a
getting
day
what
on
they
it?
can get
Okay,
until
so we
it's
can call it a
demolished.
day? Okay.
So, and I'm not
so
gonna coordinate.
you were
it.
mentioning the next step
That's
is
right.
for
We
you.
are getting prices now, estimates on several parcels in town, and then the department heads will decide whether there is any kind of value for a training burn on any of them. We're also getting a price on one on, that's a health hazard that we don't own, but under the health laws, we could demolish and put a lien on the property, the land. We're getting a price on what that would be, because that's something I think, because of the difficulty in getting to that particular one, will be very costly, and something we'll probably need to budget for next year, because there's not that kind of money in the budget to do it.
All right, anything else?
Are you going to go back to acceptance of the minutes that you deferred?
We'll just do it, let's do it next meeting. Let's do it next meeting.
Okay.
All right, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.